We need more streamers and banners and ways to cover up the persisting revelation that the best years of my life are already behind me, and from now on, everything is an inevitable decline.
Luck is merely an illusory essentialization of statistics, and is neither inherently good nor bad, regardless of wishes. Nevertheless, I don't want to feel.
Like, sure, everything is pointless and nothing brings you happiness, yada yada. Well, maybe you are right.
Amy, wait! We're not at the happy ending. There is no such thing. That's why I have to keep fighting. Then I'll get out of her way for good, and everyone else's.
Becoming mature is hard. It's not just a lack of immaturity or putting others before yourself. It's about healthily engaging with others while recognizing your own failings and how you can accept and live with them. Part of the difficulty of handling issues maturely is that it's not always obvious what the best solution is. Sometimes you'll strive to ensure the best outcome for everyone, but in the end hurt yourself and the people close to you. It can also be hard to resolve conflicts when you lack the necessary skills to help, and make decisions that you know won't solve the issue, but do anyway because there's nothing else you can do. These themes of maturity and the difficulties that entails is what I want to look at in the context of the Pokemon fan game, Pokemon Reborn. Specifically, I'll be looking at a group of 4 characters and others tied to this group because Pokemon Reborn is a very long game. It has 18 gyms with an extensive post-game and can take anywhere from 80 to 250 hours for most players. Unlike some of my other videos, this will not be a comprehensive look at the entire game because the cast and themes are far too massive, and I don't think I'm capable of making a video of that scale. This video might cover about 20% of what the game has to offer, but there will be spoilers throughout. I've tried to limit the spoilers that aren't necessary for the story I want to focus on, but I also wanted to make sure this video could be followed by someone unfamiliar with the game. I'll give major spoiler warnings once we reach the halfway point as well as post-game, so if you want to avoid spoilers up to those points, you can stop the video there. If you haven't played Reborn, I would encourage you to do so, and if you want your experience to be more fun, you can give these passwords to the first NPC in the game to improve your quality of life. With that out of the way, let's hop on a train to Reborn. The champion of the region, Ame, introduces herself, and after giving her several passwords, including Mono Flying because I named myself Featherface and thought it would be fun, our journey begins. Before we arrive at the station, having our train bombed is one way to introduce us to the plot. The train was bombed by Team Meteor, pseudo-religious terrorists that want to remove all inhabitants of the region one way or another in the name of Arceus and history. While Ame is making sure we're okay, we meet the first member of the quartet we'll be focusing on, the Electric leader Julia. She's an alumni of the Onyx Trainer School where every member of our quartet went, and she was the captain of the cheer team there. She's probably the least focused on of the quartet, but I wouldn't say she's boring. She has a lot of great moments, and there are subtleties in her relationships that make her one of the most likable members of the group. But for now, all we know is that she's the local gym leader, and besides the duties that entails, she's also in charge of defending the city's power plant. Julia has a very explosive personality, so it might seem like a bad idea to have her in charge of defending a power plant, especially since her gym puzzle involves setting off explosives, but considering the power never goes out throughout our time in Reborn, she must be somewhat responsible with her dangerous hobby. After we make our way to the Grand Hall, get our starter, and meet some of our rivals, we can finally explore the city. It's made up of 10 wards, and initially we can only explore the Opal and Peridot wards. As you may have noticed, even without the broken rail line, this place has seen better days. The streets are dirty, cracked, covered in debris, and the lake is a sludge-infested mess. When we initially boarded the train in the character creator, the conductor said the city was a dump that most people would rather get out of, but the 18 Gym League brings trainers of all stripes to take it on. Weirdly, there aren't that many important characters in the game who aren't native to the region, with all 3 of our rivals being locals. Speaking of rivals, we meet one outside this closed-off factory. This is Fern. He's the younger brother of the second member of our quartet, and he's very much an XP of rivals like Gary. He's a narcissist who's taking the law into his own hands by interrogating a Team Meteor grunt. Since we talked to him, the grunt got away, but Fern accurately assumes the nearby Mosswater facility is a Meteor hideout, so he tells us to meet him there since the grunt getting away was somehow our fault. We do need to go there to progress, but instead of going there with Fern, we can stop by Julia's gym and ask her to accompany us instead. If we didn't get Julia, she would show up anyway, but this increases our affinity with her. When we arrive, we don't see Fern, and since patience isn't Julia's strong suit, she blows up the entrance, which causes Fern to show up with his sister, the grass leader and second member of our quartet, Florinia. Called Rennie by those close to her, she's the current headmistress of the Onyx Trainer School and talks in a somewhat stilted manner. All of her sentences are as sesquipedalian as possible, which is why Fern calls her Flobot, much to Julia's annoyance. Although most find Florinia difficult to understand at first, Julia has no trouble understanding and interpreting for her. Since they were friends in school, you might assume Julia has known Florinia for a really long time and is used to her, but as we learn after we clear the facility, Julia hasn't spent much time with her after graduation, and apparently back in school, Florinia used to be more full of emotion as opposed to the stoic we see today. We don't spend much time with either gym leader as we break into the facility since there are 2 paths to follow, so we need to split up. It would probably be smarter to send 1 gym leader and 1 novice, but Julia insists on sending Fern with us while she goes with Florinia. Even though this doesn't make as much tactical sense, there are a lot of reasons why the teams were split up this way. For one, you pair up with all of your rivals at least once throughout the game, and there aren't many places where Fern would make sense as a partner. Julia was also shown to really dislike Fern, and seeing how Fern treats Florinia, she probably wouldn't want them partnered up either. Besides, she may have wanted to catch up with her old pal, and while a terrorist base might not be the ideal place to do so, it was probably the right call since Florinia leaves once the job is done. When we get to the command center, Florinia and Julia fight Meteor Commander Sirius and the flamboyant, non-binary hacker terrorist magician Ace, while me and Fern take out these Meteor side characters. After we win, Sirius says he and Ace could totally handle the gym leaders, but if 2 trainers who just started their journey joined in, they'd be done for, so they run away, and Julia decides it'd be funny if she blew everything up. With that concluded, Fern decides he's too cool to be seen with us, so he leaves, and Florinia goes to the Obsidia ward to investigate a disturbance in the area. Before she goes, she gives us the Field Notes app, which helps us understand one of the most important systems in Reborn: field effects. There are 38 if you count fieldless, fields in Reborn that give a variety of buffs and debuffs to certain moves, abilities, etc. Some of these effects include amplifying sound moves in caves because they echo, or using cut in a forest will make it a base 100 power grass move because you're cutting down a tree to drop on your enemies. By doing side quests or exploring, you can get notes that explain what these fields do, and although it isn't too important early on, knowing how field effects work is crucial to your success for the majority of the game, although if you need to know what a field does, you're probably better off just checking the wiki. For now, the only field effect she has on hand is the electric terrain, the field of Julia's gym. Julia acts outraged that her dear friend would try to give an advantage to a challenger of her gym, but Florinia just ignores her and leaves. It's a little cold, and it paints Florinia as someone who's callous even to those close to her. Julia doesn't frame it this way and says Florinia was sassing her, but wished she'd do it with more emotion. Given how annoyed Florinia was with Julia's frequent and often unnecessary use of explosives throughout the facility, you could assume Florinia just doesn't like Julia and that Julia is deluding herself into thinking they're still friends, but this isn't quite the case. For reasons we'll get into much later, Florinia has distanced herself from emotions she can't strictly control, which is why she's so stoic. Rather than disliking Julia, she's willing to indulge in Julia's annoying antics, whereas she disregards anyone who's even slightly distant to her. Once we make some preparations, we head to Julia's gym, and her arena really drives home how much her days as a cheerleader influenced her. She decorated the power plant with streamers and banners and all things school spirit. She says she won't go easy on us, but as expected of the first gym, she's rather easy, even with her type advantage over me as a flying trainer. I'm well aware of the fact that mechanics like levels don't canonically exist, and only serve a gameplay function, but it seems likely that she isn't going all out. In Reborn, the gym leaders are ranked, and they make it sound like it's according to their ability, but in reality, most gym leaders are pretty close in terms of strength, some being more than a match for the Elite Four as seen post-game. Instead, the ranks of gym leaders seem to have a stronger correlation, at least for the adult ones, to how much they can gauge a trainer's strength and hold back accordingly. There are 3 child gym leaders who do seem like they're giving it their all, but the lowest ranked leaders are Julia and Florinia, alumni of a trainer school and use unevolved Pokemon to give newcomers a test of strength. This contrasts well with the later gym leaders who have far less restraint when they fight. I have more evidence to support my theory that a gym leader's rank has to do with restraint, but I'll be getting into that much later. The reason I brought all of this up is because I think, despite Julia seeming like an explosion-happy maniac with no regard to the people around her, she's actually very sensitive to others and acts with more thought than her manic personality would suggest. With the first badge obtained, Julia asks us to go check on Florinia and deal with whatever's happening in the Obsidia ward while she naps in her gym. Maybe not the best time for a nap, but she does need to stay nearby in case Team Meteor strikes again. When we go through the ward, we see the streets are overflowing with vines and fissures, and the nearby park has turned into a deformed jungle. Florinia asks us to look for an associate of hers in the nearby Coral ward for backup, and this associate is the 3rd member of our quartet, the water leader Amaria. Amaria doesn't have a clear job beyond being a gym leader, but that doesn't make her any less active. If anything, she sticks with you for more of the story early on and regularly participates in volunteer work, like helping Pokemon seek refuge from the toxic lake. Initially, she seems more put together than the manic Julia or the stoic Florinia. She refers to Julia and Florinia by their nicknames, which shows a level of closeness, and is impressed when she finds out you beat Julia, showing she holds her friend's strength in high regard. She also doesn't brag about her rank as the 3rd highest leader, which could be simple modesty, or could further reinforce the idea that she doesn't necessarily think she's stronger than her fellow leaders. As for why she's here instead of helping out with the Obsidia situation, it's partially because she got distracted wanting to help Apoplio, but mainly because she was looking for a meteor agent in the area named Borealis. She thought she was close to finding him, but he seems to have gotten away, and the situation in Obsidia is more pressing, so she follows us back to Florinia. Once we meet up, the reaction between these two is very awkward. Unlike Julia, who understood Florinia's strange speech pattern, Amaria is very clearly just nodding along and doesn't really get Florinia. Also unlike Julia, Florinia and Amaria are all too willing to split up from each other as soon as the mission begins. You could be forgiven for thinking Florinia was the one creating distance, since she outwardly seems to be acting just as cold to the friendly Amaria as she did to the similarly peppy Julia. But unlike with Julia, Florinia makes no minor attempt at banter or conversation. Everything these supposed friends say to each other is strictly business. Speaking of business, once we enter the forest and split up, everything that could go wrong did go wrong. One of our rivals is captured by Borealis, and vines incapacitate Florinia and Amaria, leaving us to deal with the monster that caused the forest to erupt in the first place, the Pulse Tangrowth. Pulse Pokemon are bioweapons created to perform specific tasks, usually mass destruction, by amplifying a Pokemon's ability far beyond what they should be capable of. In fact, it's pushed so far that it's harmful to the subject. The Tangrowth caused what few plants were in the park to go out of control, and it's tearing itself and everything around it apart. Luckily, even though pulses often have different types as well as abilities, moves, drastic base stat total increases, etc., this one's still a grass type, so the power of avian creatures prevails. With the pulse destroyed, the park reverts to its natural state as Amaria heads off to look for Borealis and save our rival, while Florinia tells her to meet us at the Onyx Trainer School, which doubles as her gym. Considering we heard that similar machines have been sighted in the Jasper and Beryl wards, it seems like fighting her for a gym badge isn't the greatest use of our time, but we gotta fit those badges in whenever we can. Unfortunately, we have to waste even more time because Fern throws a temper tantrum that we were invited to fight the Pulse and he wasn't, so he puts the school on lockdown to keep you from fighting his sister. He doesn't even like Florinia, he just doesn't like you. Fortunately, for every student that sucks up to Fern, there are at least as many who despise him, such as the rock leader Hardy. He's the younger brother of the final member of our quartet, and he asks us to smack Fern for him, and it'd be rude to not oblige after he helps us out. After beating Fern, he decides that the only reason we've won and got Florinia's attention is because we're taking on the League, and not because he's an asshole who isn't nearly as good as he thinks he is. With Fern out of the way, we can fight Florinia, and she tells us the expected outcome of our battle is our failure, but whether this is her taunting us or dispassionate analysis isn't clear. Of course, she's wrong, we win with relative ease, and for our trouble, we get the TM for Nature Power, which is the best move in the game given how central field effects are to battles, and one I can barely use since very few flying types learn it. With another badge down, Amaria lets us know the situation in Jasper and Beryl has gotten worse, and Borealis was seen in the area. Once we get to the Jasper ward, we meet a pink-haired little girl named Heather along with her father, Corey. Corey is the former poison leader and works part-time as a doctor as well as helping law enforcement. He could be seen helping the survivors of the train crash in the beginning, and gives treatment to the inhabitants of the slum in the Obsidia ward. He doesn't want to get involved with the meteor drama, considering he has his own drama with his daughter, so he asks us to leave them alone. Of course, that doesn't work out too well for him, since his daughter has a bit of a vigilante streak and wants us to help her deal with the local pulse. It's another Tangrowth that's settled in the ruins of the former fairy gym, and is being managed by a very important meteor commander named TAKA. TAKA is one of the most sympathetic members of Team Meteor and strongly disagrees with Meteor's actions, but can't abandon or openly betray them. He knows we're an enemy and surrounds us, but luckily, Heather has a goddamn Salamence and is more than a match for the Meteor Grunts, leaving us to fight TAKA and the Pulse Tangrowth. It's a bit harder than the last one since this Tangrowth has field-boosted rock moves, and his partner Chatot actually manages to KO 2 of my Pokemon, but ultimately we prevail. Before we go, he mentions the location of the last Tangrowth and how it sure would suck if we destroyed that one too. This is how a lot of our interactions with TAKA go throughout the early and mid-game. He barely puts up a fight so he can tell the higher-ups he did his best but was no match for the almighty Featherface, and then practically invites us to stop Team Meteor from committing another atrocity. This way he doesn't have to abandon Team Meteor while also subverting the guilt he feels over their crimes. Before we can go to the Beryl ward to stop the last Tangrowth, Corey finds us and reprimands Heather for running off on her own, only to freak out when he realizes that she not only stole her deceased mother's ring, but that she was seen with it while fighting Team Meteor. While Team Meteor has many side projects for getting rid of the inhabitants of Reborn, like these Pulse projects, their real goal is to get 4 magical jewels which act as keys to the Sanctum of Arceus. This isn't something Heather or the player could have known by this point, but we did see the Meteor Grunts informing TAKA that she had the ring, as though it was the most important thing in the world. With the argument between Corey and Heather escalating, she flies off to fight Team Meteor, and he presumably goes after her. That family drama aside, we make our way to Beryl and the newly formed Rhodocrine Jungle, the most overrun of the 3 Tangrowth layers with damage so immense that even taking out the Tangrowth won't undo the damage. Unfortunately, we can't progress like normal because when we go to fight some Meteor Grunts, they use Flash and throw us in a cage with no option to fight back. This is one of my pet peeves in a lot of Pokemon fan games because there's a level of suspension of disbelief you accept when playing a Pokemon game that Pokemon battles matter. If you can achieve your goals without doing a Pokemon battle, then why would you ever resort to battling? If they beat me in a battle and as a result I'm captured, that would be one thing, but being forcibly captured without the chance to fight back feels cheap. Technically, you can sneak past these grunts and it has a small impact on relationship points in a cutscene later, but the fact that your only options are stealth or capture feels lame. I choose to be captured instead of opting for stealth for a few interactions with important characters. When we wake up, Fern is outside our cage mocking us and only letting us out if we beg and admit he's a better trainer. I refuse. I'm not even a super prideful person, I just don't like Fern. If you don't beg, he will leave you there, but there are a few ways to get out. If you have a Pokemon with Dig or an escape rope, you can use those, but if you don't, you're freed by a very interesting ally. Thanks to TAKA's intervention, we escape and meet with our allies as we prepare to attack Team Meteor. In the center of the jungle, almost every important Meteor member we've seen so far is present, along with a very curious-looking private. She seems to notice us through the vines as we make our way to the center, long before any other Meteor higher-ups notice us, but once we reach the center, we're surrounded. Borealis reveals that they knew Amaria was on his trail and let us get close to draw her out. If TAKA was inclined to turn on Team Meteor, we wouldn't be outnumbered, but fortunately, our rivals show up to fight some of the Meteor commanders. Before the skirmish begins, Borealis tells us that our resistance is futile, and no matter how many of us appear and no matter how hard we try, the outcome won't change. This sparks a very noteworthy retort from Amaria, who rejects his nihilistic outlook and says even if everything is awful, isn't it worth at least trying to improve things? This rebuttal may seem innocuous, but it's central to Amaria's character. Although it's not easy to notice without the benefit of hindsight, there are a lot of parallels between Borealis and Amaria. Both are severely depressed individuals who hate themselves and dedicate themselves to someone they love, which results in alienation from said individual. A point where they differ is that Borealis is more nihilistic as a result of losing people he loves, whereas Amaria still has hope for the future and wants to believe the world can be a better place. Before the battle begins, Heather shows up to really turn the tables on Meteor, and she ends up having to fight that peculiar-looking Meteor grunt from earlier, a fight she, shockingly enough, loses. Although we don't learn until much later, Heather is a member of the Elite Four, so this really raises the threat that Meteor Private Lynn poses. With Heather downed, Borealis disengages Amaria and sends his Crobat to get her to safety, and this turns the other Meteor agents on him, and although Ace doesn't like Lynn's aggressive tone with Borealis, they don't seem inclined to stop her from dealing with him. But Amaria does. Maybe Amaria is just overconfident in her abilities and thinks she can take Lynn. Maybe she just didn't want to lose our only lead on Team Meteor, or maybe she saw herself in Borealis and thought it was worth risking her life to save him. Personally, I think the answer is all of the above. Despite her modesty earlier, she's shown to be very competent and somewhat cocky later, even calling some of Team Meteor's best weak. When we run with Borealis, we walk into a police ambush where it's revealed that Amaria got in touch with the police to ambush Borealis in case he got away, and it's revealed that Borealis is Corey. The police will only show up if you save enough officers throughout the Jasper and Beryl wards, but it's likely that Amaria asks for their help either way. If you don't save enough cops, then Borealis would be getting away, which is a possibility I think she accounted for. Corey believes her supposed compassion was a trick to catch him, which is probably true to an extent, but I think she would have preferred him escaping to being executed. With Corey's cover blown, he retreats to his home to treat Heather's wounds. He had the officers incapacitated, which leaves catching him to us. After we beat him, he asks us to meet him on Beryl Bridge, and I'm just gonna throw this timestamp on screen that you can skip to if you're sensitive to some of the content warnings in the beginning, particularly the first one. The next scene isn't graphic, but it is one of the darkest scenes in the game. It has some important lore, but if you really don't want to see it, you can just ignore him and head north of the Grand Hall to progress the story. When we get to the bridge, we find him releasing all of his Pokemon, including his Crobat, a friendship evolution, a Pokemon he was willing to trust with the life of his daughter. Crobat doesn't want to leave, but he yells at it, telling it it's not special or different and to get lost. Corey tells us a bit about how he ended up in this situation and why he was working for Team Meteor. He never agreed with their goals, but was dragged in when they murdered his wife for the ruby ring she possessed. Corey was able to gouge the eye out of the bastard that did it, but they learned about a very young Heather, and in order to ensure her safety, he agreed to work for them. Heather was the only thing that made him want to live, but because of the trauma of losing his wife and knowing any betrayal might get his daughter killed, he was overprotective and rarely let her form connections. He was trying to protect her out of love, but that love was as poisonous as his team. With Heather now knowing he was with Team Meteor, he has nothing left. Team Meteor will execute him before long, and as far as he's concerned, he can't return to the League. He tells us to protect Heather and that her ring has a data chip with Meteor intel on it. Then...
I waited so long just to feel the wind on my cheek again. I wanted to go chasing the horizon with you one more time. Fly a little faster, darling. Just a little more. And I'd swear we could reach out and touch the moon.
We barely get a moment to think about what just happened before Fern shows up to mock the man for killing himself. This, along with Fern leaving you in the cage, is where a lot of players really start to hate Fern, and although it's easy to see why, I think his reactions, while cruel, aren't necessarily unreasonable. You could make the case that it wasn't a bad idea to leave you in the cage, since he could always send someone to get you after Team Meteor was dealt with. He's also aware that one of our rivals rushed into something she wasn't prepared for and got kidnapped by Borealis, so it's not unreasonable to leave behind someone who's ostensibly out of harm's way. As for his reaction to Corey's death, he's very self-aware of how messed up his reaction is, but isn't inclined to care because as far as he's concerned, Corey was a terrorist who murdered people. Why should he care that a killer took his own life? It's a lack of empathy, but hard to disagree with at the same time, especially because Fern didn't know anything about Corey's reasoning, although I'm not convinced he'd care if he did. Our conversation is interrupted by another attack north of the Grand Hall, so we head off with Fern to investigate. So far, I've been covering most of the story up until this point, as our central characters have been consistently present, but since this video is meant to focus on the Onyx Trainer School alumni, we're going to be skipping over a lot of scenes until they become relevant. After meeting a ton of new characters, we head to an abandoned power plant to power a door in the underground railnet. This plant is haunted by the ghost leader Shade, who happens to be the ghost that saved us on the train in the beginning, and cleaned up Corey's body with magic after the incident. Before we can fight him, he has us activate 4 terminals that show us the following. One of Corey's recent demise, another a stranger, then Lynn, and finally... If not for Corey's vision, it might be hard to discern what's happening to Amaria, but since every other vision has been someone's last moments, it's safe to assume this is hers as well. If these visions are accurate, we can at least be sure Lynn hasn't killed her yet, and maybe we can prevent these visions from coming to pass. Once we reach Shade, he simply grins at us and the battle begins. His first Pokemon is the Ghost Poison-type Gengar. It's one of the few Pokemon with a proper nickname. Corey. After we beat him, he shows us the kids we were helping earlier have been kidnapped. We make our way to the railnet and run into our rival who was with the kids when we left. He has us follow him to the police station so we can get caught up with what's happened since we fought Shade. We find Amaria waiting for us and learn that she got absolutely wrecked by Lynn and may have been killed for the sapphire bracelets she was carrying, another jewel Team Meteor seeks, but thanks to Ace's intervention she was able to escape. Predictably, Ace's disloyalty was punished and now they're working with us for a pardon. They begin by decrypting the data chip Corey left behind since no one else knows how a computer works, and we learn of 3 more pulses. One is in the Bixbytian wasteland where no one lives, another is being prepared to destroy the beachside Apothel Academy, and the final one is in the Peridot ward, right in the factory where we met Fern. It's been there all this time and has been actively poisoning the lake. Since that's the closest one, and Ace assures us that the kids will be safe for another gym in 3 pulses, we head to the Black Steam facility. With Ace's help, we reach the rooftop, and it doesn't take long for us to get surrounded. Amaria opens a path for us to get ahead while she takes on 8 meteor grunts by herself. Once we get through, we learn Ace betrayed us and they drop us down a trap hole, which we escape without issue because if that was enough to stop us, we wouldn't be the protagonist. At the center of the facility, we find the Pulse Muck and the leader of Team Meteor, Solaris. We met him under the Grand Staircase earlier, where he info-dumped his manifesto about how we are heretics for burying a holy city or some stupid shit. Deciding that our meddling will no longer be tolerated, he moves in for the kill when Amaria busts out of a vent and KOs his Garchomp. She's presumably been fighting this whole time and wipes the floor with everyone that stood in her way. Noticing she has the sapphire bracelets, he says he'll let us go if we surrender them. Even though he just had his ace knocked out, it's not hard to see why he thinks he has the upper hand. She's been fighting the whole time and has been worn down. There's only 2 of us versus Solaris, the meteor scientist responsible for creating the pulses, a Pulse Muck, and 8 other meteor grunts surrounding us. Amaria refuses, less from a we don't negotiate with terrorists standpoint, and more because they were a gift from her beloved girlfriend Titania. Unfortunately for Solaris, he's a lot more bark than bite, because despite outnumbering us, and both of us being tired from fighting our way through the facility, we destroy the pulse and he acknowledges that he isn't strong enough to take the bracelets. So his Tyranitar punches Amaria into a wall and they all run away. This can't even be considered a draw, because if it was a draw, he'd be the winner. He has 8 grunts on the perimeter, and if they knocked each other out, then the grunts would be able to take him to safety while grabbing the bracelets. With Meteor gone, we go to check on Amaria, and although she won't be suffering any long-term injuries, she'll be out for a while and asks us to deal with the remaining pulses while she recovers at home with Titania. This isn't the first time we've heard about Titania. She's the fourth member of our quartet, and Julia mentioned her after the events at the Mosswater facility. Julia hinted that Titania had a role in Florinia deciding to repress her emotions. That's not the only thing unsettling about Titania, because Amaria describes her like this.
We have something truly special after all. A lifetime both behind and ahead of us, of water, air, mist, and pulsing moonlight, a silken world pouring down marbled stairways of trust and promises. We sat under the rain as it fell from a spotless, starry sky, and I could have sworn not a wisp of it reached us. The only thing we felt was precious lightning, gently kissing our scars from head to toe. Silken sand was our embrace, every bead like God-sent glitter decorating her perfect, soft skin. I'll treasure every single memory with her. Sorry, never mind all that. I get a little lost in her sometimes.
This sounds more like worship and devotion than love. She treats Titania as the center of her universe, and a relationship that's built on worship rather than mutual respect is concerning. Although I suppose we could assume at this point that their feelings are mutual. With one pulse down, we make our way to Apothel Academy, and after finding TAKA on a nearby island, he tells us that Team Meteor will deploy a pulse camera-up on Pyrus Mountain to bury the area in lava. We help our rivals reach the top and find the operation managed by Solaris himself and TAKA, who's revealed to be his son. Their relationship is stilted, and even this early on we can assume they don't get along, because one is an extremist trying to exterminate most life in the region, and the other is a dude with a Chatot who thinks maybe genocide is bad. It's time we fight Solaris ourselves and, oh, level 75, huh? Our level cap right now is 45, and this is a supposed-to-lose fight, but the fight is perfectly winnable and can be a major branching story point. Solaris only has his Garchomp, so I got the Murkrow from an alleyway in the Lapis Ward with Prankster Parish Song, and in 3 turns that's an easy win. Of course, there are other ways to beat him. With enough Intimidate pivoting, you can lower his attack enough to beat him down, or you can use the Focus Sash hidden under the Grand Stairway with moves like Endeavor or Destiny Bond. If you want to use less resources, mons with Counter and Sturdy can one-shot him with some HP investment, so if you're willing to strategize, you can win. If you're blindsided by this fight and don't have the necessary tools, you can leave at the cost of some relationship points with your rivals. But in my first playthrough, I used brute force and a bit of luck to take him down. Even though we won, Solaris is a dirty cheater and uses a max revive, even though I used the no items password, and the pulse is about to activate. Just in the nick of time, the sickly head teacher of the academy comes to help us and... wait, her hair. Haven't I seen her somewhere before? Shit. Luckily, one of the Meteor agents betrays them and stops the pulse, but the damage is done. Apothel's headmistress is dead. She was like a mother to one of our rivals, and although we never got to know her that well, we now know that Shade's visions weren't a joke, and with beating Solaris' Garchomp and not preventing this, it's possible they can't be stopped. At the very least, if we find the red-haired woman who pushed Amaria, maybe we can figure out her motive. So let's skip over multiple gyms and pulses and straight to her introduction.
Oh, you saw that just now, didn't you?
Great. So much for intrigue. If she's with Team Meteor, it's very easy to imagine why she'd try to kill Amaria. Given Amaria's still recovering from her injuries, she's especially vulnerable right now, but if her girlfriend is anywhere near her level, then she'll hopefully be safe. Eventually, the other story threads of Reborn take us to Agate City. Or it would if the city wasn't under some bizarre sleeping spell that almost gets us, if not for this. This is Terra. She's the ground leader, and that's all I'm going to say about her because trying to say anything else about this 2008 internet gremlin would melt my brain. When we get to the Agate Circus, we learn from the local gym leaders that they received a tip from someone who's definitely not Ace, that a Meteor agent named Titowin is operating in the area. Amaria lives in the nearby Fiore Manor, so we head there to exchange intel and finally meet her girlfriend, the Steel leader and final member of our quartet, Titania!
Oh, hi Tanya. This is the Featherface I told you about?
When we follow her upstairs, she tells us not to mention our encounter earlier, and I'm inclined to oblige. I'm still wary of her since I believe Shade's visions to be accurate, but at the very least I'm sure she's not aligned with Team Meteor. If she was, it would be very easy for her to kill Amaria, who's all too willing to be vulnerable around her, and take the bracelets. I'm also giving her leeway because she's the one who gave Amaria the bracelets in the first place. Starting to sense some uncomfortable parallels to what happened with Corey and Heather. When the TV turns on downstairs, we learn that there's a major confrontation with Team Meteor between Calcinon and Labradora City, and Titania tells us not to get involved, and especially to not involve her and Amaria. Apparently, Amaria has a history of mental health issues and self-harm, and Titania doesn't want her engaging in self-destructive or self-sacrificing behavior. Given what happened in the Rhodocrine jungle, it's not exactly an unfounded concern. With the situation deteriorating in the north, we go to get our next badge so we can use Surf and help out. While getting the badge, Terra tells us the signal responsible for putting Agate City to sleep is coming from Ambertine City, so we should head there and put a stop to it. With the necessary badge, Titania goes to look for Surf while Amaria returns from an investigation. She tells us she's been looking more into Tidwin, who is definitely operating in the area, and how she's afraid it might be Titania. Titania left her diary on a nearby table, so we read it and find writing about how she's sick of this fake romance and the lies she's forced to swallow. We don't read more because Titania walks in and is understandably pissed with us, and this is where things get really uncomfortable.
Tanya? What is all this?
It's just notes for a story. Not that it's any of your business.
Oh, so it's just for her story. That's good. So all this about lying to her and only pretending to be in love with her?
It's for a character.
Right. Of course. Hey, Tanya? Does the name Tidwin mean anything to you?
No. Why?
No reason. I was just curious. About what it looked like when you lie.
Excuse me?
I get it now. You never really loved me, did you?
What are you talking about? Are we really going to go over all this again? How many times have we had this conversation?
How many times have you lied to me?
What?
Go on, give me a number. Will you tell me you've always been honest? Can you really look me in the eyes and say that to me? I knew it. And here I've been, drinking up every single thing you've ever told me. And when I thought I knew better, I let myself believe it because I couldn't stand to tear myself away from you. I loved you. I still love you so much. I don't know who I am without you.
Stop.
When we were together, it felt like you were picking up the pieces of my heart, all made of glass, and gently placing them back together.
I said stop.
And now it's just shattered again.
Amaria, seriously. Amy.
Standing uncomfortably close to the edge of a waterfall, Amaria lashes out at Titania for lying to her all this time, not only by pretending to love her, but by being a member of Team Meteor to boot. She wants us to take her side in this, but I don't think Titania has betrayed us yet. If she did, Amaria wouldn't still have the bracelets. Titania tells us she was giving Meteor false reports specifically so that they wouldn't find her. And even though Amaria doesn't seem to believe her, that's not what this is really about. She's far more hurt by Titania's false love, viewing it as disgustingly manipulative. Titania tries to reassure her that she's the most important person in her life, and while I believe that's true, that's not what Amaria wants to hear. Amaria wants to be loved the way she loves Titania, feelings Titania won't, or really can't give despite her best efforts. Their conversation reads like Titania is Arrow Ace, and she started this relationship thinking maybe she'd come around to properly loving her, or at least last long enough for Amaria to emotionally stabilize. In any case, she started this relationship because she cared about Amaria's well-being. Because she was afraid without her, Amaria would do something stupid.
I didn't want you to do something stupid just because of me, just because I'm cold-hearted and made a mistake and the cost sunk more every day. What was I supposed to do? I thought if I told you, or even if I just rejected you in the first place, that you would go over the deep end and...
Well, maybe you were right.
Amy, wait! Featherface, I'm going after her, but I don't have a way back up. Figure it out.
Without the HM for Waterfall, we have no way of going after them. There's nothing we can do but head to Amertine City and hope we find the HM along the way. And, side note, do not, under any circumstances, force yourself down the waterfall with debug. This will sequence break your game and irrevocably corrupt your save file. The password to skip teaching my Pokemon HMs doesn't break the game, and all passwords you can give in the beginning are safe to use, but if you mess around with debug without knowing what you're doing, don't be surprised if you break everything. With that PSA out of the way, I'm going to skip to when I have Waterfall and meet with an angry and tired Titania.
Do you have any fucking idea how long I've been down here? Because I sure don't.
Oh, come on, it can't have been that long. All we did was stop the bombardment of Calcinon City, get a gym leader kidnapped, engage in hostage negotiations, find out Fern joined Team Meteor because he's actually the worst, destroy another pulse, save Heather, liberate Amertine City, find out that Terra sent us on a wild goose chase and was Agent Titowin all along, and trap her in a digital prison of her own making. Okay, so maybe it's been a hot minute. If you didn't have food when you got down here, I don't know how you've survived. Speaking of surviving, these meteor grunts sure haven't. Turns out that waterfall led straight to Reborn's water treatment center, which has been taken over by Team Meteor. As soon as she got down here, they grabbed Amaria and locked Titania in this room, leaving these poor saps at her mercy. Luckily, we don't need to wait as long as she has because the new commander is on site and is giving us the freedom to wander the area, a mistake this messenger doesn't live to regret. Now, what kind of meteor commander would do something so detrimental? Oh, you already know who it is. It's TAKA. It's always TAKA. He meets with us to ask Titania to chill on her massacre of his comrades, which she says she'll consider if he brings her Amaria, but he isn't willing to betray them that openly, so her Aegislash remains drawn. This is a really divisive aspect of her character, with some players going as far as to call her just as bad as Team Meteor for killing people, which I think is more than a little extreme and a false equivalency. I'll admit I'm not the biggest fan of murder, even against enemies, but like with Fern's reaction to Corey's death, I think she deserves the benefit of the doubt. It's worth remembering that Team Meteor's goals are explicitly genocidal, and if Meteor is willing to resort to any means necessary to kill everyone in the region, why should she hold back when the people she cares about, along with everyone else, is on the line? She's also been down here for a while and is scared and furious, but if we feed her, she's able to think more calmly and is more willing to let some Meteor grunts live. Further into the facility, we hit a dead end, but TAKA flips a switch that drains the water in the room, and Titania finally figures out what he's been doing this whole time, and is not happy about it. Throughout the water treatment center, TAKA has been supposedly messing with the water levels to stop us from progressing, when in reality his meddling has enabled us to get closer to him. Even though this is directly benefiting us and indirectly benefiting him by easing his conscience and minimizing the damage Team Meteor can do to the region, Titania hates him for this. It's not his betrayal that angers her, but his intellectual dishonesty and unwillingness to go all the way in betraying Team Meteor. It's obvious to her that this is a bad situation that he doesn't want to be in, but he isn't willing to distance himself from it because of the obligations he feels to his family, the family that's dragging him down. It's a dynamic that mirrors hers and Amaria's, and it's infuriating to see someone doing the same stupid thing she's done for so long. She almost wishes he was an unambiguously evil prick so she could just kill him and be done with it, but it's not so simple. Once we deal with the pulse that's been damaging the water treatment center, we reach the control room and he hands over Amaria and the bracelets, but lets us know that Meteor knows the bracelets were here and are on their way to retrieve them. Titania is willing to accept the responsibility of stopping them, but TAKA has a favor she's not so willing to indulge. He wants one of us to fight him so he can pretend he tried his hardest to stop us. Titania got what she came for, so she doesn't want to waste time fighting someone so his cowardice can be enabled. She tells him if he doesn't like Meteor, he should just leave. Simple as that, which is obviously hypocritical given that she's unwilling to leave her own bad situation, but you know what they say, sometimes the advice we give others is the advice we most need to hear. TAKA practically begs us to fight him, but I refuse. While it might be nice to have a man on the inside to sabotage Team Meteor, his sabotages are a little weak, and it's only a matter of time before Team Meteor falls. It would be best for him to get out as soon as possible, ideally with as much info as he can bring, and join us before that sinking ship claims him too. Despite Titania telling him off, I know it's probably not an easy decision for him, not only because of his family connections, but because he may reasonably fear that no one on our side would take him. Titania certainly wouldn't, but if he ever wanted to leave, I'd gladly take him in a heartbeat. Refusing to fight turns out to be the right call, since as soon as we try to leave, Ace shows up to fight us. If we fought TAKA, we may have had to deal with both of them at the same time, or worse, Ace could have gone after Titania and Amaria. Ace seems to recognize that we don't have the bracelets and TAKA's team is unharmed. Their confusion lets us get away, but we get to see a little of the conversation that follows. Ace realizes exactly what happens, and when they ask what he was thinking, TAKA almost breaks down. He's afraid of Lynn, afraid that with this failure, she's going to kill him. Ace reassures him that she can do no such thing, and no matter how much anyone in Meteor looks down on him, he is ultimately the heir to their legacy and cannot be allowed to die under any circumstances. Knowing that Lynn is making dangerous power plays, Ace intends to send a message to Solaris to have her excised from the organization, but before they can send it... When we catch up with Titania, she asks us to follow her to the Fiore Manor so we can prepare to fend off Meteor's assault. We don't have time to get back up as helicopters start flying by, but fortunately, we run into Julia and Florinia. They haven't shown up since we beat their gyms, which was 10 to 11 badges ago at this point, but with their OTS buddies in danger, they're ready to get back in the plot and help defend the manor. As we enter the building, Team Meteor lands on the roof with Solaris, Fern, and other Meteor higher-ups. Just as we finish preparations, Solaris busts down the door with a very simple and very stupid proposal. The bracelet for our lives. I guess he forgot how well that worked for him last time when he had significantly better odds. With that, the infamous Fiore gauntlet begins as 2 Meteor Aces bust through the window, and we take them down with no problem. I mean, one of them, this absolute clown, Meteor Ace Keenan, leads with a Sticky Webs Livani. Florinia's whole team is so slow that Sticky Webs don't matter, and I'm a flying trainer. This guy's a joke. I'm sure that won't be ironic later. With Fight 1 down, a Meteor agent who was fighting Julia seals her in the other room to face us as they bring out Fern, who's pretending to be a hostage. Unfortunately for them, Florinia is not going to back down because she's not an idiot, which weirdly offends Fern. She didn't know he was with Meteor, and he boasts that he gave them the layout for this place since he visited the manor with Florinia when he was younger. It's kind of ironic that he's so hurt when he explicitly joins people who are trying to kill his sister and all of her friends, but by this point it really shouldn't be surprising that Fern is a scumbag. It also shouldn't be surprising that, even with an ice specialist backing him up, he's still no match for us. He tries to tell us that we'll rue this day, but Florinia calls it a market success and tells his dumbass to rethink his life choices. Solaris remarks that he really regrets not killing us when we were weaker, but Fern says we're given too much credit because he refuses to accept a world where we're good at anything, and that we only won because of Florinia. From there, he goes off on her about how she never loved him and wouldn't have cared if his life really was in danger.
What if my life really had been in danger, huh? Some sister you are. You really are dead inside. You really are just a stupid robot now, aren't you?
Incorrect.
Isn't that what you wanted to be?
Incorrect.
You turned your back on me, yourself, and everyone else, so now you have to hide away.
Incorrect.
And you'd rather hurt me than show any emotion yourself. You're gonna make everyone else do all the work just because you're scared. You're just selfish and a coward. You never had it in you to show even an ounce of care for me in the first place, even after everything.
The vile he spits at her, especially at the end where he says he doesn't have a sister and that Meteor can do whatever they want with her, really gets to her. So much so that her guard is let down enough for Sirius to knock her out. This causes Julia, the master of timing, to bust through the ice barrier, kick the asshole who blocked the door over a rail, and blow up Sirius for laying a hand on her bestie. This is one of the more emotionally intense moments for Julia because we only get to see her this defensive and angry a few times. Despite her explosive personality, she can be pretty detached from tense situations, like the train bombing in the beginning of the game, but when her friend is in danger, she's no longer inclined to fuck around. With Meteor's forces weakened, Solaris steps up for the last fight, and by the way, every fight so far has not been a simple 6v6. Florinia and Julia have full teams, and the Fern fight in particular was a 12v12, one of many in Reborn. Solaris uses a sand team, so you'd think Julia wouldn't be a great partner for him, but she does her job well enough, and even with their last resort plan to burn down the building failing, they retreat. Solaris implying he's going to give Lynn even more power before he goes. With that threat dealt with, Julia asks if Florinia will be okay, and Titania says she thinks she'll be fine, but Florinia has a tendency to be affected by things more than she needs to, and with that, Julia has had enough.
Would you stop it already?
I will when she does.
In case you didn't notice, it's normal for people to be hurt when their friends blow up on them. She trusted you and you betrayed her.
Florinia risked her life to come up and save Titania and Amaria, and how does Titania respond? By being a jaded asshole because Florinia felt hurt that her brother became a terrorist and told his terrorist friends they could kill her. This is a rare moment for Julia because she's usually a very conflict-averse person, not even wanting to join Florinia in the Obsidia Ward because she knew they'd be meeting up with Amaria and didn't want to be around if drama unfolded. What drama? Well, we don't learn the full scope until later, but what can be inferred at this point is that Titania got into a fight with Florinia, and this led to Florinia concluding that she needed to detach herself from her emotions. Julia wants all of them to be friends and is almost certainly aware of the drama that went down, but stayed out of it because she isn't exactly the best at handling these kinds of situations. She does her best to act cheery and cling to the high school days when they were all friends because it was a time she remembers them being happy instead of the bitterness they feel today. A bitterness she holds Titania responsible for, and she isn't even wrong to do so. It isn't taking into account how Titania's actions have been a detriment to herself, but Titania distancing herself and Amaria from the group caused an uncomfortable rift that left everyone feeling isolated because she thought that was the best way to handle it. She was wrong, but she did what she did with the best of intentions. Titania isn't a therapist, and probably needs one herself, and shouldn't be responsible for handling Amaria's mental health on her own. Even beyond the mental cost, their relationship led Titania to some uncomfortably intimate places. I don't know if it would be accurate to say Amaria forced herself onto Titania, but she wasn't happy with how physical they got when she didn't share Amaria's feelings. As horrible as everything has been for the quartet, at least things can only get better from here, right? Now that Amaria's safe, maybe they can handle the situation in a more healthy way that's better for everyone. I say maybe because, of course, nothing can be so easy. When Amaria wakes up, she has amnesia and doesn't recognize me. Obviously, no one is happy about this, but Titania especially feels like life has fucked her over. Again. Despite how horrible the experience in the water treatment center was, at least she could finally drop the act. At least she could finally start taking care of herself, and with Amaria in a safe place, maybe she could get over the breakup with time, but now, everything that happened was for nothing. She can't bring herself to tell Amaria the truth because she's afraid of having to deal with another suicide attempt, so she takes the bracelets and runs away. The others know that Meteor is after the bracelets, and Amaria is willing to accept this as Titania trying to protect her. It also gives Titania some much-needed alone time. Florinia makes her way to Calcenon City as that's the closest place to the Team Meteor base that Fern is likely to go to, and she needs to get him back. Amaria stays at her manor to recover, and Julia stays to protect her. Before we move on, I'm going to drop a spoiler warning. At this point, we're roughly halfway through Reborn's story, and while I am mostly focusing on the OTS quartet, I'll still be spoiling other parts of the story as they relate to our characters. One reveal in particular is coming up, so if you'd like to go into Reborn with as many of its big reveals unspoiled as possible, I would recommend stopping the video here and coming back later. After the disaster at Fiore Manor and defeating the Flying Leader, we can finally use Fly and go back to the main city that we haven't been able to visit for 4 gyms now and... Words cannot fully capture the pure joy of seeing the city restored to this condition after having to take detours and walk around rubble for the first half of the game. A scene I skipped over earlier involved saving the fairy leader from a cave that had them trapped in time, and they swore they were going to fix the city, to make it more like they remembered. I figured that was just going to be a post-game thing, but oh my god! I can't even believe this is the same city we started in. I know we were gone for a while, but this level of progress is staggering. If you haven't played Reborn before, you might think I'm exaggerating, because it's very hard to convey just how different it feels. Pretty much every new player I've seen always ends up hitting dead ends in the broken streets by accident on their way to a location they want to visit. Without actually exploring the city for yourself, you can't fully appreciate just how great it feels to walk down a street. To continue the main story, we need to meet with Ame in the Grand Hall, but honestly, take your time and explore. The city has been reborn, pardon the pun, and there's a lot to do. Every ward has more to see, there are a ton of engaging quests, and the lake is clean and can be explored. Go have a blast, and especially do this quest for Arclight so you can get the Mega Z ring before continuing. When ready, we find Ame in the Grand Hall and learn that the Devoncourt building in the Obsidia ward is another Team Meteor base. This isn't surprising since we found TAKA working there before we knew he was even a member of Team Meteor, and they're the only building that doesn't look refurbished after the restoration. Lynn is the commander on site, and as far as the League higher-ups are concerned, she's the biggest threat to the region, so Ame decides it's time for her to do her job as champion and take her out. We break into the building and it's a trap. Again. We're forced to fight our allies, and when we meet up with Ame, she's already fighting Lynn and...
So, the so-called champion is this week. Flash cannon. Checkmate. Now end it. Today, the heart of Reborn falls. How marvelous and how droll.
That may not have been as heavy as the Cory scene, but it's probably the second most graphic death in the game. I won't be showing the first, have fun finding that one. Most players reasonably believe Lynn is some kind of monster who won through magic, but believe it or not, Lynn's Hydreigon can survive a moonblast from Ame's Alolan Ninetales. We know the EVs on both of their mons, and with a timid nature, Lynn can survive, although knowing the EVs, it's not necessarily wrong to say she cheated. She also grabbed Ame's Pokemon before leaving, and we're not able to stop her. Luckily, our other friends' lives were spared, so we were able to escape. The fairy leader asks us to defeat the rest of the Pokemon League so we can assume Ame's role as champion and destroy Team Meteor, which we were already planning on doing. After defeating them, we learn that Meteor is planning to go after the Sapphire Bracelets, so with the newly repaired train, we make our way to the desert to help Titania. Once we get off, we run into TAKA hiding behind what I really wish was his own Alolan Executor. He's been sent to stop us at all costs. With his failure at the water treatment center and Ace no longer being around to watch his back, failure will not be tolerated again. In other words, they've sent him on a suicide mission. TAKA isn't a stellar fighter, and no one in Meteor has managed to beat us yet, so the higher-ups who lack loyalty to Solaris just wanted an excuse to execute his son. TAKA knew before the battle began that he didn't stand a chance, and now, Lynn is probably going to kill him. He has no chance of fighting Team Meteor, and doesn't even know if they can be stopped, especially not by him. But we can. That's all we've done since the beginning.
Can I come with you?
Fuck the hell yes. I wouldn't have it any other way. TAKA's been a friend to us this whole time, and I've got a real soft spot for this vagrant scion. I won't be going too in-depth since this video is about the OTS quartet, but I think you all deserve a little glimpse of the TAKA Desert Date! With Taka taking a nap in his train, we go in search of Titania. Her gym is said to be deeper in the... what? Once upon a somewhere? Well, after walking for longer than you'd think, we find a crystal staircase into the heavens, where Titania's castle lies. There we find Lyn. She tries to imply Taka led her here, but there's no way that was his intention. He did imply that she may be watching us from a distance back in the desert, but she likely would have followed me anyway. We're a far more important target to Lyn than Taka, as are the sapphire bracelets. Speaking of the bracelets, we need to find Titania immediately. She's proven herself capable, but Lyn can't be defeated by normal means. Unfortunately, while navigating the castle and beating one of the knights, we get smacked. Considering the knight's name was Rai Lyn and only had an Alolan Ninetales, I probably should have caught on quicker. Luckily, the fact that we never have our guard up is compensated by the fact that no one kills us when they have the chance. After finding some of Titania's ominous poems, we loop through the tower enough to find an exit and...
Featherface? I'm here! I'm so glad to see you. I woke up here, and Lyn, I'm sorry. Featherface, I'm so sorry. I didn't want her to... I didn't want this. Please, believe me. I'll try and find a way down to you. I'll find a way down. Just hold on, please.
Before we can find a way to Taka, we find Titania and she gives us the sapphire bracelets. She's planning on facing Lyn alone. These idiots are going to get themselves killed. We need to find Lyn before she finds them. Ironically, the same thought was going through all of their heads. They awoke in a tower. Stone, cold, alone. A dragon guards him, its fangs bared against the world. Brimstone breath faithfully reserved for whatever ironclad ignoramus thinks himself so mighty that even fire may not char their miserable flesh. But there is one who can slay the beast, the one to whom its back is turned.
So, she gave you the bracelets freely. Why don't you do the same for me? Or do you really think you can stand up to me, even after what happened to your precious champion?
And so it's over. That was all it took, huh? Someone should have done that a long time ago. Our whole world is in disarray because of you. Wait. What?
Well done. If you keep swinging that thing around like that, sooner or later, someone is going to get hurt.
Yeah, you!
That was all it took.
Ow! Hey, let go of me!
Is that really what you want? Should I let go? One step closer and she cinders Featherface. So this is how weak you are? One attack while your opponent's back is turned. Is that really all you can muster? And yet, now look whose back is exposed.
Yours! Edgeslash! Featherface! For the sake of everything good in this world, just fucking die already. What was that kid even doing? He shouldn't have gotten in the way, but it's her fault it ended up like this in the first place. I feel like shit. Come on, Featherface. Let's go.
Featherface? Don't worry. This is fine.
What are we even supposed to feel after that? It'd be unfair to blame Titania. She didn't know Taka was in the armor, and she thought we were in danger, and she clearly feels awful for what she's done. She may have resented TAKA, even calling him vermin, but she didn't actually expect to kill him, especially after he finally cut ties with Team Meteor. Killing someone who was ostensibly innocent deeply damages her perception of herself. She may not have thought of herself as a good person, but she always thought what she did was in everyone's best interests, and this was the result. When we fought at her side in the water treatment center, her trainer class was Guardian, but after what she did to TAKA, her new trainer class is the Guardian Exile, a sign of the guilt she carries. Before we fight for a gym badge, which kind of feels inconsequential with Lynn's death, her pre-battle speech summarizes the mindset that led to this point, the one that's caused her pain, and one she can't escape.
We're not at the happy ending. There is no such thing. That's why I have to keep fighting.
She's one of the harder gym leaders, but not only have I played this game enough for her to not give me much trouble, mono flying has been a pretty easy monotype overall. Gyarados and Hawlucha curb stomp most of her team. Losing adds more sting to the piling stress of everything that's happened, but she's still grateful that we saved her life earlier and shows a rare moment of appreciation. Quickly followed by distress when Lynn emerges unharmed. I made sure to check her corpse after Titania skewered her, but now I'm wishing I pushed her into lava when I had the chance. Then again, knowing Lynn, she'd probably brush that off too. Rather than fighting us, Lynn just wanted to make sure we leave with the sapphire bracelets, and I doubt it's because she thinks she couldn't take them by force. Her insistence temporarily makes Titania worry that we've been working together, but she quickly realizes that's impossible. Lynn tells her if she doesn't let us keep the bracelets, she'll kill Amaria, and despite all the shit Amaria has put Titania through, that cost hasn't sunk enough for her to let Amaria die.
I killed you once. I'll do it 1,000 times more.
Feel free. You understand the rules. You could be the very reason she dies. But maybe you would want that.
Don't be stupid. Nobody wants blood on their hands. That's why you made me kill that boy.
With Lynn gone, Titania asks us to go check on Amaria while she handles TAKA's body. Though it may have been an accident, she's still responsible for his death and won't leave him there to rot. This whole gym really recontextualizes her actions in the water treatment center, especially the line about how no one wants blood on their hands. She doesn't like killing people and only resorts to violence when she feels she has no choice. She's a cynic who doesn't believe happy endings are possible, and the only way to get any semblance of peace is to fight. Perhaps this is why she chose to specialize in steel types, so that she could be strong enough to weather any condition, to shrug off the damages life inflicts, and to hit back in equal measure. Steel is also famously immune to poison, but unfortunately it can't help her with toxic relationships. Speaking of uncomfortable relationships, Julia! I feel bad for Julia. She's been left out of the story for most of the game, and that's not going to change anytime soon. It would be reasonable to assume, since Julia's relaxing, that Lynn hasn't shown up yet, but once we reach the gym's arena, Lynn's having a very casual conversation with Amaria. Well, it's casual on Lynn's part, since Amaria is wary of her, but probably less than she should since she doesn't remember Lynn beating the shit out of her. Lynn leaves after giving her some kind of message, and when we talk to her, she's more wary of us than she was of Lynn and runs away into her labyrinth. Before we go after her, let me give a tip for players who get stuck in this maze. I've seen a lot of people, both novices and veterans, get lost in here, but there are two things you need to know to get through quickly. One is that you can enter a linear path to her arena by going south of the first dive point, and when playing hide and seek, you just need to keep moving forward in either the left or right paths. They form a circle, and when the room glows rainbow, you've found Amaria. Every time you find her, she gets more and more annoyed with you. Each conversation lets slip some of her mental health issues, past suicide attempts, and her toxic dependency on Titania. She admits that she knew from the beginning of their relationship that Titania never loved her, that she could feel the disgust on her lips in their more intimate moments. She knows that she's making Titania's life worse, that she's a toxic person, but she doesn't know any other way to live. Amaria has gotten good at presenting herself as a cheery person, as we saw in the beginning of the game, but it was all an act, as far as she's concerned. She puts on a smile even when she feels dead inside to not worry others, and thinks Titania is the only one who will accept her imperfections, that Titania is the only one who can fix her, and this leads to complacency. It's rather ironic that she became a water leader when her most common method of attempting suicide involves drowning. In fact, Lapras is her ace because it saved her from drowning years ago. Perhaps she chose to specialize in water types because water can be beautiful. It can be comforting to feel on your skin, and it's something we all need to live. But as we see the more we go through her gym, it can also be harmful, and if left to stagnate, dangerous. After all, if you take in too much water, you drown. Fortunately, Titania doesn't get lost as easily as the average player, and she saves us. Amaria insists that she didn't know we were down there, which is less and less convincing as we wake up, and at this point, Titania has had enough. She has sacrificed too much for Amaria, and she's risking more still by fighting Team Meteor to save the region. And at the end of the day, Titania has nothing.
You have me.
Yeah. I have scars. You're one of them.
And with that, Titania finally walks out of her life for good. She doesn't know if this is going to push Amaria over the edge again, but she can't do this anymore. She can't enable Amaria's worst traits, and she has to start caring about herself. With Titania gone, Amaria feels as though she has nothing, but with what little dignity she has left, she apologizes for what she did, knowing it was unreasonable and unfair, and heads to her arena. You know, I felt bad for Julia before, but her situation, while not as bad as the others, is still rough. She has to be the designated comic relief character, so even though she hears the yelling and screaming, and probably saw Titania carry our unconscious body upstairs, she can't say anything about it even though she's clearly uncomfortable. It probably doesn't help that although she likes Titania least out of their friend group, she still wants them all to be friends, so all this drama must be a bummer, but hey, she's Cheer Captain Julia. She's fun and energetic and bubbly, and nothing will ever get to her. Yeah, nothing at all. To continue the story, we need to fight Amaria, and again, it feels really awkward to have a gym battle after all of that, but when else are we going to get this badge? Before the fight, she asks us if we prefer singles or doubles, but she'll pick the opposite of whatever you choose. I didn't end up doing it this time, but if you fight her in doubles, she'll often send her Lapras out last, and it's as funny as it is chilling when she only has Lapras and uses Perish Song. Especially if it's the only Pokemon left on the field, because all major trainers have dialogue when they're down to their last Mon, and hers is one simple word: drown. This is actually one of the harder fights if you're not prepared, but can be trivial if you have the right setup. You could take Julia's advice and use electric types since her field conducts electricity, but the real pro gamer move is to use Sludge Wave. If you use Sludge Wave twice, it changes the field to Murkwater so the arena can be as toxic as her personality. With her defeat, she gives us a badge and leaves. Don't worry, she's not going to kill herself. She'll show up later. With another badge down, we get word from Chalcedon City that shit's going down, so that's our next destination. The city is a lot more barren of main characters than before, with only Hardy and Florinia left. Florinia thinks it would be tactically inefficient to send more people to look for the others, since that's what the last people who went missing did. Titania shows up and tells her to stop hiding behind the veil of logic when, in reality, she's just scared. Florinia rejects this, but Titania retorts that feelings may be irrelevant and irrational when it comes to logical decision-making, but they're also inseparable. Florinia is not a machine, and it's not hard to see how everyone around her leaving and never coming back might hit a little close to home. Titania compromises Hardy and Florinia's concerns by staying with her to guard the city while we join Hardy in search of the others. Before leaving, Titania tells us she needs to keep her distance from Amaria, but that she may have left Florinia alone for far too long. It's good that she's taken a step in the right direction by breaking up with Amaria, but it seems like she still holds problematic assumptions that got her into this mess in the first place. For one, she still assumes she knows what's best for people and thinks she knows them better than they know themselves. It's not wrong of her to point out how Florinia is hiding behind the guise of logic and reason, but she's treating Florinia's behavior as a problem that needs to be solved, rather than the way she's grown to be. It is true that Titania is a big part of why Florinia decided to disconnect from her emotions, but it's incorrect to assume she's the sole reason. Despite not believing in happy endings, it seems she's approaching the issues her friends face with the same logic. The whole reason she stayed with Amaria was to help stabilize her mental health, and then break up as soon as she thinks she can without making Amaria want to kill herself. While she has backed out of that toxic situation, she didn't exactly make it better, and the lesson she learned from it was that she needs to not enable people's bad habits. While this is an important lesson, it's not the full picture. She's still working under the framework that people's problems can be solved, and that's the end of the story when people are more complicated than that. It's very ironic given that she recognizes the issues with happy endings in stories when in her own story she fails to recognize she's using the same logic, hoping when she solves their problems she, like the writers of happily ever after stories, can stop thinking about them. As we make our way through Route 4, we find a building known as the Glass Workstation, which supposedly belongs to the Devon Corporation. Given what happened at the last Devon building, it's pretty obvious this is a Meteor hideout. So with Hardy's help, we bust our way in, only to fall into a sleep trap. Luckily, a Glaceon wakes us up, although Hardy can't for whatever reason. And once we terrify enough of the staff, we confront the cause of our missing companions and the sleep spell over Agate City, the Pulse Hypno. I'm going to skip over most of the story that goes on in the Glass Workstation since it isn't relevant for the focus of this video, and would lead into an unhinged rant that I'll spare you from. What I will say is that the Glass Gauntlet begins once you enter the room and is pretty infamous as it's the first of many 6v12 fights. The Gauntlet has a lot of moving parts, but since you have access to every non-legendary Pokemon by this point, barring a starter or two, you should have more than enough options to win. This is an important milestone since the fights will only get harder from here. Once we beat the Gauntlet, we wake up in the Abyss. It's not clear what this place is, and we don't find out how we got here until after we escape. We start by talking to the train conductor from the very beginning of the game and seem to retrace the steps of our journey, but things are very off. All the characters don't talk the way they usually do and practically wear their insecurities on their sleeves. Whatever this place is, it shows the part of people that they're too scared to openly admit to. We see a lot of familiar faces, but I'll be focusing on the important characters. When we find Julia, she says the same quote about needing more banners that she said in the beginning of the game, but instead finishes the sentence by talking about how she has to pretend the best years of her life aren't behind her, and that she has to keep up this cheery, happy-go-lucky energy in a desperate attempt to keep everything else in her life from falling apart. When we find Fern, he reenacts the scene from the Onyx Trainer School where he locked the front door, but admits he's doing this because he's jealous and hates you. You are more worthy of Florinia's praise and attention. He is not. He has never been, and he fears he never will be. Florinia just says nothing for almost a minute and eventually just cracks, wanting someone, anyone to notice her suffering. We find Titania and Amaria reenacting the scene of her attempted suicide, but Titania doesn't immediately jump after her, and sits there. When we talk to her, she says,
It's better this way, but you're not the one who gets to decide that.
As we make our way through, we relive the horrors of people around us getting killed, facing their traumas, breaking under the expectations of others, until eventually we see TAKA. He tells us that it hurts, that he's in pain, but he doesn't want to give up. We gave him hope when we beat Solaris on Pyrus Mountain. We made him believe Team Meteor could be stopped. Even as he's falling apart, he reaches out to us, saying he doesn't want to give up, that he doesn't want to be useless, that he wants to be strong. He wants to be like us, but in the end, he vanishes, just like everyone else. Before the nightmare can go any further, we are stopped by the Dark Leader Luna. It took her a while to find us, but we are needed in the real world, so she sends us on our way while she stays behind. We weren't the only ones in the void, and someone has to find them. We are then shown being carried by Shade out of a black hole to the gym leader's left from our onslaught. Under the control of Pulse Hypno, we were forced to fight several gym leaders during the Glass Gauntlet, and when things got desperate, the psychic leader Radimus's Gardevoir used her life force to create a black hole, sucking up the Pulse Hypno, us, and some nearby trainers. That void was the product of Gardevoir's last bit of life. With the Hypno's spell broken, all of the missing characters who weren't absorbed into the void, as well as some new faces, join us as we leave for Calcinon. There is a lot of character development available with a large chunk of the cast showing up, including a cute moment where the insecure bug leader Shelly asks Titania to be her friend and mentor her so she can be more helpful, but that's not what we're going to focus on. The character we need to talk to is Eve, the woman who designed the pulses and was forced to work for Team Meteor. Now that she's escaped, she gives us intel on the remaining pulses. There are 2 pulses in Labradora City that are inconveniencing us, and this thing called a Pulse 2, which maxes out a Pokemon's EVs, which I'm sure won't be a big deal. The final pulse Team Meteor has been developing is unfinished, but is the most dangerous of them all, the Arc Pulse. It combines the specific immense power boosts of a standard pulse and the maxing out of EVs of the Pulse 2, and incorporates it into an Arceus. Fortunately, Team Meteor will need an Arceus that they don't have, and a huge power supply which they're looking for in Agate City. Speaking of Agate City, with the Pulse Hypno's destruction, the city has started to stir, and this means that they're vulnerable to an attack from all directions. While everyone else deals with the grunts, we meet with Hardy at the apex of the city to find Lynn, Solaris, and Sirius. Lynn tells them to hold us off while she searches for the power source, and while Solaris is offended she would have the gall to give him orders, he does as she says as he wants a chance at revenge against us. This bastard has a lot of nerve to want revenge against us while taking orders from the one who killed his son, but it feels even more insulting that he doesn't even know that TAKA is dead. Solaris is apparently using Pulse 2, but he isn't noticeably more difficult than previous encounters. His Mega Garchomp takes surprisingly little damage, but it is infamous for being slower than regular Garchomp, so I'm sure its Mega is the only reason it's so bulky. When we win, Sirius mocks Solaris for his weakness, the death of his son, and for losing control of Team Meteor. He founded Meteor to restore Reborn to its historical roots, dedicated to worshipping Arceus, but the people working for Sirius only care about creating a new world where they're at the top. Realizing how screwed he is, he runs away as Sirius gives chase. The gym leaders show up and hold off the remaining Team Meteor personnel as we chase down Lynn. When we catch up to her, she's made it to the core beneath the city and found that the source of power they sought was long gone. She laughs maniacally at the time and manpower Team Meteor spent looking for something that was never there. All their efforts have been for nothing.
Life is unfair like that.
Honestly, I'm not even surprised that she could do that given her other logic-defying actions, and given how she forced us to fight each other in the Devonex building, maybe she's just a psycho who enjoys making people suffer for her amusement. It doesn't matter what she is, though. She's not getting away again. At least, that's what I want to say, but we're powerless to stop what happens next. Shelly and the Agate Circus leaders attempt to stop her, but out of the same nothing she brought forth the Relic Stone. She revives Radimus's Gardevoir and would have banished all of them to the void if the fighting leader Samson hadn't pushed the others out of the way, as she flies off. It's hard to not feel like Shelly after seeing something like that, like we could have done something to prevent it when it was out of our hands. We were able to push Meteor out of the city and have a lot of them captured, but they got what they came for. Or did they? If Lynn could have made that at any point, then really all we've done is play into her hand. It's a depressing note going forward, but if nothing else, it means Meteor is down to their last base, Labradora. Once we beat Hardy and get the 17th badge, we make our way to Calcinon to prepare for the final battle.
No doubt, you have questions. You deserve answers. But for you, whose memories are as empty as your dialogue, you will get none.
With the end in sight, Julia and Amaria show up to lend a hand, although it seemed like Julia had to drag Amaria here, and she's back to putting on the facade of being happy and confident, while being as passive-aggressive as possible. Florinia and Titania are still cleaning up the mess in Agate, so all that's left to do is find a way into Labradora, which presents itself soon after we arrive. A defected Meteor agent named Bennett is still thought to be working for Team Meteor, so he'll go inside the city and disable the barrier so the army we've been gathering can finish Team Meteor off once and for all. Once the barrier is down, everyone moves in and has a specific target in mind. Julia is going to hopefully not level the city, and Amaria totally sincerely says she hopes to work with us again. As we make our way up, we're ambushed by the legendary Meteor Ace Keenan! You guys remember Keenan, right? He was that guy with the Leavanny from the Fiori Gauntlet, and here he is again with that same Leavanny. You know what? Just for old time's sake, I'm going to have my same Mantine one-shot it with Air Slash. What? At the center of the city, we find the dragon leader Saphira trying to stop Lyn to no avail, as even if she could remotely threaten Lyn, it's even more impossible with the close-ranged blasts of a pulse clawitzer. Just as all hope seems lost, Shelley nails Lyn with an air slash, and the other leaders who are cleaning up Agate come to the rescue. They know that even together they cannot defeat her, but at the very least they can keep her busy while we destroy the remaining pulses. Meteor's defenses only get more intense the closer we get, but a would-be 2v1 is circumvented by Amaria's aid. Whether she did this out of a genuine sense of remorse, a desire to defeat Team Meteor and putting her disdain of us to the side, or to try to prove to Titania that she's a redeemable person is unclear, but like with her motivation for fighting Lyn in Rhodocrine, I'm inclined to say all of the above. For her, this was taking out multiple birds with one stone. She does feel a little sorry for how she treated us, but her hatred of herself eclipses her hatred of the protagonist, so she's usually too busy pitying herself to show an ounce of kindness. This situation helps ease her conscience a bit while maybe showing Titania that she can make up with people she's hurt, and she can annihilate Team Meteor without remorse. Proving a point to Titania is surprisingly the least likely of her motivations since she's a little busy fighting Lyn at the moment, and Amaria never brings up the fact that she helps us to her, so it's possible the most cynical of her motivations isn't present. With the remaining pulses dealt with, we find Amaria outside the central building that Team Meteor retreated into. Everyone else is inside giving chase, and she tells us to make a backup save? Well, before you go in, there's a Sylveon in this chest. This is the password. It has a collar with an address you can go to for the final sticker of the Obsidia department store. If you've collected all of them up until this point, you get access to their top floor, and premium items, including things like leftovers and focus sashes. Consider stocking up before you go inside. The others have searched the building, but for some reason there's no sign of Team Meteor and no exit, and what's worse, as soon as someone tries to leave, the entrances disappear and... No. Somehow, Team Meteor's Terra, the ground leader who betrayed us earlier, is back and has taken over the Labradora arena. Time for another round of what we got back in the Devonix building where we are forced to fight our friends to proceed. One of the matches in the first round is every member of our quartet facing off, with Julia and Amaria facing Titania and Florenia. Everyone except for Titania has gone on ahead since she really doesn't want to do this. She figures Terra must know about their relationship to set up this kind of match, and the limits of her sanity and patience are gonna break soon. This tournament brings out the worst in some of the characters, Titania and Saphira most severely. Titania becomes far more nihilistic and loses faith in anyone but herself. The premise of the tournament means that only one person can get ahead, and for Titania, there's no reason she should let it be anyone but her. Her distance from others is only weaponized here, as if you try to talk to her at all, you'll lose relationship points. She doesn't want to deal with you or anyone else. There's no reason to play nice when all of you have to fight each other in the end anyway. As far as she's concerned, talking to her is just begging for attention she's not obligated to give, so she just sits alone in the corner until the fights begin. Every round begins with Terra providing admittedly pretty funny commentary and snarky nicknames, but for the sake of brevity in this already far too long video, I'm just going to show the ones that involve our quartet. Things start off relatively tame and even a bit humorous until Terra dubs Amaria as a wannabe Ophelia, which is morbidly hilarious, but understandably takes a turn for the worse, as Amaria rejects that, but Titania tells her it fits her to a T. Julia tries to defend Amaria, but Florenia takes Titania's side on this, which causes the group to splinter further. Titania takes this as an opportunity to hit Julia with all of her grievances, deciding she's sick of everyone in this friend group and their baggage. She honestly goes way too far, and I'm shocked to be on Amaria's side as she defends Julia. It's also the second time we see Julia show a moment of sincerity instead of acting zany. She acknowledges that her ideal friend group has never existed, that the closeness she wants them to have hasn't worked from the beginning, but that it's still worth striving for. That even with all of their problems, she cares about all of them, even Titania, and wants them to get along. This is probably why she's been paired with Amaria. Both of them are seeking out an ideal that at this point is impossible to achieve. It's very easy to read this conversation, especially the line where Amaria says she's not giving up on Titania, as Amaria trying to get back together with her, which would obviously be catastrophic for everyone involved. Even with that understanding, it makes sense why Julia would be more aligned with Amaria than Titania or Florinia. Titania is trying to further split this friend group to get her desired isolation, and Florinia is detaching herself from the situation so thoroughly that she doesn't even seem to care that she's going to leave her friends in the dust. Julia has been relegated to a background character for most of the story, and although Titania's harshness goes way too far, it does bring out a more human side of Julia. Amaria is right to call Titania out for how she treats Julia because she's wrong about her. Julia's more than aware of how fractured their relationship is. She just chose to not get involved with the drama. Titania can call that cowardice or say she's delusional if she thinks things will just get better on their own with time, but unlike Titania, Julia knows her limits. She's not strong or smart enough to handle the brunt of Amaria's mental health issues, and it's not fair to hold her responsible for not ruining her life in the name of fixing her. Is it not enough that she tries to be there for Amaria in more calm circumstances and make her smile? Is it not enough to, if not help her work through her problems that she doesn't know how to address, to be there for her so she's not alone? To get her out and about instead of hiding in her pool all day? The only reason Amaria came to Labradora is because Julia brought her there. Because she didn't want to leave Amaria alone. Julia and Amaria don't spend much time on screen together, but when they do, Amaria is usually somewhat happy. She pokes fun at Julia in Chalcedon, and she seems amused in the beginning of their conversation before the fight, where Julia was de-escalating the situation. Maybe she's faking some of it, and maybe all Julia is doing is distracting her from her depression. But isn't that still okay? Is Julia a bad friend for not knowing how to make someone as suicidal as Amaria learn to like herself? I don't think so, and I don't think the game does either. This scene hit a little close to home because I've felt a lot of the emotions expressed here. I've sometimes worried when I've confided with friends about my depression and self-loathing that I'm just dragging them down, like I'm a nuisance. Like I'd be a better friend if I just shut up and smiled, and if I kept overbearing them with my concerns, I wouldn't have friends. But I know that's bullshit. I know that this kind of thinking doesn't help anyone, and I appreciate the friends like Julia, who may not be able to help me get over my low self-esteem, but still make me happy. It honestly pisses me off how everyone in this group takes Julia for granted, being so used to her hyper-personality that they can't imagine Julia not being around to cheer them on when they need it, just because her cheering wouldn't have been helpful at their worst. Perhaps this is why she chose to specialize in electric types. Maybe she thought if she could remain hyper and energetic, she could spread that energy around and bring the same cheer she brought as the cheerleader captain back in school. Maybe she thought if she was a consistently silly and happy person, her friends would know there's someone they can turn to if they want to smile. Maybe she thought if she could fake it until she made it, they could all laugh again. Unfortunately, she couldn't make it. When the next round begins, we find the winners were Titania and Florinia, and the losers are frozen in a digital prison. As much as I feel bad for Julia, I also feel bad for Amaria. In spite of her questionable motives, I think Titania was slightly unfair to her too, albeit her grievances with Amaria are a lot more justified. Amaria wasn't lying when she said she was trying to do her best to be someone she can like. She tried her best to make a positive impact on the world when she saved Pokemon from the formerly toxic lake and chased down Borealis and eventually tried to save him. Maybe if you're cynical enough, you could call these good deeds self-serving. She did organize an ambush on Corey, and charity work may have made her look good, but after all we've learned, is it hard to imagine she wanted to save Borealis to prove he was wrong? He reflected some of the worst and darkest thoughts she felt about herself, and rather than let it get to her and fall into despair, she rejected his nihilism. She may have agreed with a lot of his philosophies when applying them to herself, but she chose to fight to better her situation. She has, and still is, getting twisted along the way, but I think someone who acknowledges the pointlessness of life and tries to find meaning anyway can still become a better person. This won't happen if she keeps chasing the past, but maybe, just maybe, Amaria can become a person she can like. A person who makes others feel seen. To be a lifebuoy rather than an anchor. Her choice to save Corey was also uniquely hers. Titania wouldn't be caught dead trying to save a member of Team Meteor. Florinia similarly wouldn't have risked it unless she was certain it would result in his capture. And Julia probably would have avoided that loaded situation. I feel confident in saying Amaria's attempt at saving Corey was something only she would have done, and in spite of all of her other faults that she is by no means forgiven or excused for, I think it's worth acknowledging her attempts to be better. With the first round over, the partners from the previous round are paired against each other, and Titania is darkly unremorseful. She doesn't resent Terra for making her take out her entire friend group and felt good when Amaria stopped talking. Not unsympathetic given all Amaria did to her, but still a little dark. Even more so when she says people not talking is already an improvement. She's aware that she's a damaged person, but doesn't care anymore. She's ready to kill the past. As far as she's concerned, caring for others has only ever held her back. Before their fight begins, Titania is initially ready to jump straight into it, but hearing Florinia still talking the way she does makes her stop. It pisses her off, and she tells her to stop throwing the world's longest temper tantrum. She reveals what Florinia had apparently never realized until now. Titania didn't tell her she was too clingy and emotional because she was sick of her. She did it to get Florinia away from Amaria. Amaria's ever-sinking mood was dragging down the very sensitive Florinia, so to prevent one depression case from becoming two, she pretended to get mad at her. Florinia has no response to this as Titania draws her Aegislash.
This is how the past should die. Draw your last. I've no misguided mercy for you anymore.
The thing that gets me most in this conversation isn't Titania's overbearing edginess or cruelty to her friends. It's that she's wrong. She thinks her literary skills make her capable of reading everyone like a book. She thinks she understands why I was checking up on her earlier, why Julia, Amaria, and Florinia are the way they are, and most of all, she thinks she knows herself. She thinks she's a person who does better when she's alone, and that if she kills the past, she'll be free from her pain. But she's wrong. She was wrong about Julia, thinking she was ignorant of their fractured relationships. She was wrong about Amaria, saying she wasn't trying to get better. She's wrong that others hold her back and that she doesn't need them to survive. Titania may think that isolation will make her whole, but helping others is too deeply rooted in her personality. She sacrificed so much because the thought of Amaria killing herself terrified her. She, even when she tells herself it'd be better to not get involved, puts herself in tense situations for the sake of helping others. She's wrong to think that cutting people out of her life will make her happy. But more than anything, she was wrong about Florinia.
Whoa. Rini, you actually beat her?
Correct.
Despite all her tough talk and high rank, huh?
Correct.
In spite of everything Titania said, in spite of the fact that steel resists grass and the field they were on more readily helps steel than grass, Florinia won. She doesn't gloat, she isn't happy, it was just another result. Titania believed that Florinia's dialect was a temper tantrum, something she was doing for attention, and not a belief she incorporated into her identity. The reveal that Titania never hated her may have shaken her, but it wasn't as severe as the emotional damage Fern inflicted. She knew what she had to do as soon as the tournament began. She's been approaching the situation logically this whole time, and while there is a weakness in her inability to accept her emotions, she might be able to see something the rest of us don't. It's definitely one of the more legendary scenes in the game, and is the ultimate reason why I said back in the beginning that ranks don't equate to strength. Remember when that was relevant? Remember when this was about challenging an 18 gym leader Pokemon League? Well, that's technically still part of the story, even though it's no longer the focus. And despite there being only one badge left, our journey is far from over. In the second-to-last round, we face Florinia, and her pre-battle speech is a reworded version of the speech she gave back in her gym. Except now, when she predicts failure, it's her own failure she expects. Of course, she's right. After everything we've been through, there's very little anyone can do to stop us in a Pokemon battle. She tries to tell us that there might still be hope before she's cut off by Terra, and all that's left is for us to face Saphira. She's the only leader whose badge we don't have, so it wasn't hard to see this coming. Unfortunately for Saphira, her team is a veritable one-trick pony, so even with a field advantage, she doesn't stand a chance for most players, and even if you struggle, Terra lets you leave to prepare out of spite for Saphira muting her in the arena. Once we win, Saphira is angry at everything and everyone and berates us for always standing there, rarely talking, just battling our way through every problem thrown at us, like a doll with power it never should have had. In spite of all of our strength, the problems of the world can't be solved by battling them away, something Titania would be all too aware of. Battling won't save a friend from getting killed. Battling won't stop a friend group from splintering. Battling won't magically solve depression. Battling won't bring back the dead. All battling can do is stop what's directly in front of you with brute force, and it can't save our friends.
Greetings.
But she can. Florinia overcame the deletion effect and is preparing to drag Terra from wherever she is. With Terra given a physical form, we can finally fight her and... She still hasn't given me my, oh, there they are, wait, auditory sense? Please don't tell me oh, god damn it, how did you get into my editing software? Okay, so, maybe rewatch that section with subtitles to know what I was saying. Before Florinia can paralyze Terra, she proceeds to delete herself, and according to Florinia, that means she's gone for good. Florinia didn't want to kill her, so that effective suicide is just... disturbing. Florinia stays behind to unfreeze the others while we go after Team Meteor. Before letting us go, she shows a subtle but incredibly meaningful display of growth. She wishes us good luck. She used to text dump about luck not being real whenever someone wished her luck, but now, she's willing to express hope to others. After finally escaping that dreadful building, we come face to face with Solaris. We found him earlier with his eye gouged out, and he implied he was going to do something helpful since we set him loose. Unfortunately, he seems more inclined to help the team that betrayed him. Team Meteor is still his family, his legacy, and he'll silence any threats to the organization.
Even those within the team itself.
Too little, too late.
What manner of devil are you that neither tooth nor nail may stay your cantankerous blight?
I am inevitability. None are permitted to interfere.
Was he trying to save us? He must have known he couldn't have won. If he was stronger than Lynn, he wouldn't have enlisted her help in the first place. We find his body further up the road, a Meteor loyalist desperately trying to save him. There's something sad about his death. Despite hating the man, he was still TAKA's father, and I know he wouldn't have wanted this. With Solaris out of the picture, there are only a few members of Team Meteor left, and they've taken refuge in Victory Road. Icicle crashes are lobbed at us, but Saphira was the first one Florinia freed, and she keeps them distracted while we work our way around and find a way to send them crashing. The further in we get, the more the participants of the Labradora tournament join us as the fire leader sets up some minecarts for us to destroy the Meteor encampment. Most of their remaining members, including Sirius and Fern, were up there but unfortunately escaped to another platform as Fern tries to pelt us with arrows. After more puzzles and dropping a stalactite on their last encampment, we make our way to the end of Victory Road, and it's a pretty exhausting journey. So exhausting that we're about to be buried by an avalanche. He released his Pokemon. He knew he couldn't beat her and released his Pokemon so she couldn't hurt them. Once again, we've been saved by TAKA's Chatot. Would I like to add Chatot to the team? You better fucking believe it. Once we reach the final gate of Victory Road, Florinia catches up with us after finishing the undeleting process and tells us how to progress. There are 4 chambers with crystals corresponding to the 4 jewels that make up the keys Meteor has been after. In each chamber, a major story event happens, but I'll be skipping over the Sapphire Chamber since we're not focusing on the characters present, and the Amethyst Chamber, although I will note that Gardevoir is defending it, and she's forced to banish her trainer to the void before leaving us. The Ruby Chamber is guarded by Sirius and is more important for the development of other characters, but Hardy and Titania are there too. The only chamber that's really important for this video is the Emerald Chamber. As you may have guessed based on who's left in Meteor, this is guarded by Fern, and he's really getting sick of us. He tries to stealthily shoot us, but we happen to activate a crystal that reflects his attack. We weave our way through the room, dodging attacks as we go, and each time he comes close to hitting us, we activate more crystals. No matter how hard he tries, he can't land a hit and can barely slow us down. We're like a monster on par with Lynn, but worse in his eyes because Lynn's open about her selfishness. He's heavily projecting onto the world that since he's a horribly selfish piece of shit, that everyone else must be too, and those who pretend to be good are just manipulators. It's a view ironically shared by some characters who hate him. After reflecting the last crystal, his Decidueye has taken too much damage and he runs away, saying he can't deal with us.
If I never saw you again, it would be too soon!
Fern, the feeling's mutual. Once we gather the crystals, we open this deceptively easy door puzzle and make our way to the end. Well, it should be the end, but we have one more battle. In spite of what he just said earlier, he's convinced that we are not worthy or strong enough to take on the Pokemon League, and declares that he will beat us, take our badges, and be the one to stop Lynn? The woman he's been defending and working for since Batch 10? Fern admittedly is harder to beat than usual, but he's still Fern at the end of the day, and when he's beaten, he breaks.
Why does it have to be you? It should have been me. It should have been. It should still be. But you got in the way!
Florinia showed up right before the battle began, and at this point, she's had enough. Titania called Florinia's personality a temper tantrum, but Fern shows what a real temper tantrum looks like, and although she still cares about her brother, he's gone way too far over the line. She may not have a grasp over her emotions yet, but she is very aware that she has them, and her desire to get Fern away from Team Meteor is legitimate. Fern may whine that no one has his back, but she'll always be there for him, and nothing he says will ever change that. After Florinia properly defends herself, Fern reveals his motivation for being a terrible person throughout the game, and why he is the way he is. He wants people to smile at him. He wants to be good enough that people can look him in the eye and smile at him, acknowledging him as a worthwhile person. While I may appreciate a good smile connoisseur, the only way I can really react to this is with Titania's reaction.
Oh, shut up already. Nobody ever smiled at me? Boo fucking who. Here's a novel thought, baby genius. Did you ever do anything worth smiling at?
You know, in spite of how much of a nihilistic prick she's been for the last few hours, her rant and subsequent smacking of Fern into a piece of machinery is really cathartic. Fern has never been forced to confront his own shortcomings because even when losing to us ruffles his feathers, it's never resulted in serious reflection. Now that he's been beaten and abandoned, he has no choice but to go with Florinia and sit in the corner to think on what a bad boy he's been. With this, Titania thinks she's done enough damage and is afraid she made things worse for Florinia, but is also not remotely sorry for what she did, and honestly, I wouldn't be either. With all but Lynn dealt with, all that's left to do is challenge the Pokemon League and defeat Lynn once and for all. I know I've said that like half a dozen times by this point, but this time it will definitely be true. I promise. Don't look at the runtime. If you're wondering why we need to fight the Elite Four, the reason is because Pokemon game, but the loose story reason is that every member of the Elite Four has one of the plot jewels, and when we beat them, they give it to us, saying we'll need them. Maybe their magic will give us a fighting chance. These artifacts have changed hands a lot throughout the game, but if you're wondering why I don't have the bracelets, it's because they were given back to their original owner, who will be giving them to me as soon as I beat them. This'll be the team I am bringing to the Elite Four, and yes, I am bringing Chatot. We are going all the way together. I don't want to show some of the members of the Elite Four to preserve their identity, but once we beat them all, we finally come face to face with Lyn.
Now that you're here, we have no need for words, do we?
She's right. It's time for battle. She leads with Alolan Ninetales, the one she stole from Ame, and all but one of her Pokemon are the aces of her victims. Solaris' Garchomp, Radimus' Mega Gardevoir, Ace's Delphox, and Samson's Conkeldurr. They're all fitted with P2, meaning their stats are maxed out and their free will is oppressed. All of their happiness values have been set to 0 since they absolutely hate having to work for their trainer's killer. Pokemon have default happiness unless they're running specific moves like Return or Frustration, where the happiness levels actually matter. So it's interesting that Lyn's Pokemon were given this treatment that most people would never see. It's a hard fight, especially with no field to take advantage of, but once we beat the rest of her Mons, it's time to take on the ultimate Pulse. What? Pulse Abra? Didn't I destroy that thing back in Tanzan Mountain? Well, it's certainly no Pulse Arceus, but it's still harder to kill and stronger than the rest of her team, but clearly it's not the main event. Before it collapses, she has it teleport us to the gates of the Sanctum beneath Reborn City. With no way to escape, all we can do is make our way to the inner sanctum and prepare for the final battle. As we enter, Lyn monologues at us and mocks our inability to speak as the world begins to distort, with visions of a dark and dreary space surrounding us. When we get to the center, we find an opened portal that doesn't look like the doors that were here before. For the first time, we can actively interact with Lyn, but all she has to tell us is to go on through. Once we enter, we're left isolated on a meteor in the recesses of space, with Lyn not far from us as she enhances the Arceus with its pulse form. The battle begins as we fight Lyn's true team at full power in the infinite darkness of the new world. This is one of the most powerful and oppressive fields in the game, and it's good to read the wiki page for it or check the field notes you find right before the league. Its most noteworthy trait is how it disorients all Pokemon present, with grounded Pokemon having their speed lowered, and flying Pokemon having their defenses lowered. The new world cannot be overwritten by any terrain or weather, with the only moves capable of changing it being Gravity, which turns the field into the Starlight Arena for 5 to 8 turns, or Geomancy, which can do it permanently. Its most devastating buff goes to the Dark Z move Black Hole Eclipse, which quadruples the base power of the Z move. Her Honchkrow happens to have this, and even the most bulky of targets are pretty much guaranteed to be deleted by this attack. As if her team isn't stacked enough to take advantage of the new world, it's also anchored by the unrivaled power of Pulse Arceus, or as many in the community call it, Pulseus. Pulseus's base stat total is a disgustingly high 975, and it's outfitted with Pulse 2 on top of everything else. I didn't bring a Salamence this playthrough, but for perspective, when I played for the first time, I had my Salamence hit it with a +6 Outrage, and after Stealth Rocks, it was not enough for the one-shot. It easily had 15% or more health. Frankly, your best bet is to save a cheesing option for this fight specifically, like Destiny Bond. But obviously, if you don't know ahead of time, you can't have that option ready. Certain sufficiently bulky Pokemon like Sylveon and Toxapex can reliably tank its hits and wear it down with Toxic, but its Moonlights restore 75% health, and if you lack reliable recovery, it can be brutal. Depending on your story choices, Lyn's team can actually be a little different, but for our purposes, we beat Pulseus and finally win.
Just look at the stupid look on your face! Did the big, brave hero really think they're done?
What? I'd like to thank you all for— Okay, no, I've done that bit before, I'm not doing it again. Obviously the story isn't finished yet. That Lyn we just beat wasn't the real Lyn, and although we beat her, the real Lyn and her eccentric personality are still out there. We're going to be moving on to the post-game, so this will be the final spoiler warning. If you haven't gotten to playing post-game yet, I recommend doing so, as I will inevitably spoil moments of post-game that you may want to experience for yourself. I'm sure some of you won't care for this spoiler warning as you ignored the previous two, but you'd be surprised by how many people get to post-game and really slow down despite how much story there is left to cover. While I understand post-game can be a bit of a slog at times, I find some of the best battles and puzzles are in post-game. That being said, we'll still be focusing on the OTS quartet, so we'll be covering a very small amount of post-game content. The quest hub for the rest of the game will be the North Obsidian Nightclub, which also doubles as the battle frontier. You can earn battle points for a variety of handy items, a boss rush against every gym leader, and if a major character isn't busy with another quest, you can fight one of their theme teams or engage in double battles. This is all secondary to the main feature of post-game, that being the legendary quests. There are 40 quests, and every legendary is mandatory to encounter, even though 10 of these quests have no story to them. Before we get into our relevant quests, we need to talk about anomaly Pokemon and Umbral trainers. Anomaly Pokemon have this white aura around them that allows them to act as trainers, and almost every legendary is an anomaly. In order to catch them, you need to defeat them in battle. Most anomalies have themselves as the last member of their party, and are fitted with Pulse 2, and no, you can't catch them in their anomaly form. Once you beat them, the white aura disperses and you can catch them properly. If you're fast enough, you can quick save before the fight with the wild Pokemon begins, which makes catching or shiny hunting easier. Umbral trainers are important characters who have been removed from the story in one way or another, or have been too deeply affected by a legendary. This umbral energy forces out the deepest parts of the character and can make them seem unhinged or broken. It's important to note that this doesn't make them different people, it just forces out their anxieties in a similar way to the versions of characters we saw in the Void. Not all characters are affected equally, as some have minimal effects or, even in their unhinged state, still hold on to their values, while others can devolve into screaming messes. Unlike anomalies, these trainers usually have Pulse 2 on all of their Pokemon, but like anomalies, this energy disperses once you beat them. Before we begin our legendary hunting endeavors, we can find Julia in the nightclub as she's one of the first characters present, and we learn she's been getting up to some interesting business while we were gone. After we disappeared and New World gates appeared all over the place, everyone assumed the worst about us, but Julia, not wanting people to feel down, made up lies about what happened to us. And she never told the same lie twice. So now most characters we talk to react very bizarrely with a wide range of believable to unbelievable stories, and it seems she chose her stories carefully. One funny example is she told Shelly that we were kidnapped by a Darkrai, which motivated her to get stronger so she could save us. I hope you won't call her gullible for this because that happens later. The first, and unfortunately one of the last quests Amaria appears in, is the Reggie Trio quest. This New World gate appeared near her house, so she decided to deal with it until you show up, where she decides to make this your responsibility because she hates you. Before she goes, we learn Julia told her that we were eloping with Titania, and Julia, what the hell is wrong with you? I poured my heart out defending you as a character and how your perspective was interesting and worth exploring, and then you told the girl who tried to drown me that I'm dating her ex? You're supposed to be more self-aware than that. Anyway, that's the extent of Amaria's involvement with this quest, and she doesn't engage in any other quest until the end of post-game. She also has very little to say to us no matter what quests we do, which makes her an exception to the rule of character reactivity. Most of the time, after you finish a quest that has plot in it, characters related to the quest will comment on it. Sometimes characters who aren't involved but are friends with those who are will have something to say. A fun example of this can be seen in the Meloetta quest, where almost a third of the cast will react just because they think Meloetta is cool or cute, especially the more musically inclined members like Hardy. As for what our heroines are up to, I've already brought up Julia and Amaria, so that just leaves Titania awkwardly leaning against the wall since she doesn't like interacting with people, and Florinia, who finds the nightclub overstimulating, but tries to have a prominent place in the center, preferring to be around people instead of being alone. We can chat with them after doing some Julia-related quests to see that in spite of everything that went down in Labradora, they still want to look out for each other. During the Hoopa quest, a whole bunch of crazy nonsense goes down, which accumulates in the return of Terra as an Umbral trainer. She's extremely mellowed out and normal and gives an almost understandable explanation for why she acts the way she does. When we get to the Hoopa and begin the Scooby-Doo chase sequence, Terra and Julia's combined madness causes everything to blow up and the overwhelming majority of the cast groans as they have to deal with Terra again. Other than Terra's friends in the circus, the only ones who aren't infuriated are Julia herself, who gets along with Terra's antics, and Florinia and Titania. Both of them have some grievances with Terra and find her obnoxious, but can't bring themselves to fully hate her because they're happy to see Julia having fun. It's honestly refreshing to see after how cruel Titania was to Julia and shows that she does care about her. Most of the quests until Tier 4, even when they do have a story, are pretty thin on plot. Some characters get resolutions for their arcs, sometimes it's silly and sometimes it's serious, but overall we don't get a strong grasp of what's going on. The main plot of post-game is Lynn spawning legendaries, mostly for shits and giggles, and seeing what happens. She's also responsible for pulling people out of the void as Umbral trainers and effectively saving once-lost characters, although it is worth remembering that she's responsible for most of these characters dying. This takes a shift in the Lottie twin quest when we work with Florinia to catch the titular legendaries. The fight is pretty rough as Florinia doesn't have a good matchup into their teams, but after we win, rather than catching them, this happens.
I don't want to feel.
Somehow, Florinia became inundated with umbral energy. With the help of Latios, we begin to learn the language of emotions as we try to figure out what's wrong with Florinia. The first few emotions we're able to get her to identify are guilt, sorrow, and anger. Latios is concerned that the only emotions we can initially find are negative ones, and while it may seem promising that she's recognizing the danger of repressing these feelings, we don't have as much luck with the next set of emotions. The next two we identify are joy and passion. Despite their positive nature, Florinia is far more distressed by these emotions and wants to treat them like an illness that must be cured. She worries that these positive emotions can be used against her, or that overly indulging in them will hurt her more in the long run. This neatly leads to fear. She doesn't want us to diagnose this one, but she's unable to deny her fears, and admits that suppressing her emotions may be the cause of a lot of her problems. She acknowledges the necessity of fear and all the emotions that came before, but doesn't know how to deal with the final emotion she feels, the emotion that lies at the heart of all of her troubles, the emotion that's most important to her. Love.
All of this, everything was hidden because this subject wanted, because I wanted to be loved. Not in the twisted way that Amy asked of Tania. I didn't want that from her. I just wanted us, all of us, to stay together as friends.
This quest actually made me realize that Julia may have acted over the top for all of these years to compensate for Florinia's lack of emotions, to get a reaction out of her. Julia likely comes closest to giving her the love she wants, but because of Julia's own barely addressed insecurities, she can't express them in that way. This quest is a huge growing point for Florinia as she's now more willing to introspect on her emotions, which can lead to mending some of her fractured relationships. This, as it turns out, was Lynn's intention all along. She acts like a snarky little shit and meanly makes fun of her to us, but thought that this would make her more fun to play with. This is far from the first time Lynn interacts with us from whatever divine throne she sits upon, but it is the first one that's important for our characters. Lynn turns out to be a child and is using her godlike powers to mess around for her own amusement, but is using post-game as a way to do some good and, as can be seen in this quest, help others. She tries to force us to thank her for what she did here, and while every dialogue option is that, if you hit escape or X, you can actually reject thanking her. She's a little peeved at your sass, but admits it was a pretty funny thing, and...
But you're on thin ice. Literally.
Okay, that was actually really funny. After this, we get word of a New World Gate appearing on the outskirts of the city, and who do we see answering the call but Fern? He's one of the last characters to appear in post-game, and while he has done some legendary damage control, he's mostly been hiding in his room because he's embarrassed by the scar on his face courtesy of Titania's slap. Despite how tense our last interaction was, he's a lot more chill and requests a rematch. He's still a cocky little punk, but he's not as sadistic or demented as he was when he was trying to help the world-ending terrorists. When he loses, he says he agrees to let us have the first crack at catching the Mewtwo that supposedly lives here, but that if we fail, he's going to catch it instead. Given that I only use flying types, I don't really want a Mewtwo, but I don't know if I want Fern to have it either. After exploring this psychedelic domain, we find the Mewtwo, and once defeated, it's revealed to be a Mew and runs off, much to Fern's annoyance. As far as he's concerned, we missed our chance, so he plans on getting it himself, but he's pretty bad at hide and seek and never catches it. We end up following it through another New World gate, which leads to a forest deep in the region, and before we can get it... No fucking way. You did not just do that, Fern. Oh, this has got to be pretty embarrassing for you, buddy. Does this remind you of anything? A jungle with cages that one of us fell into and needs the other to release us?
What, do you want me to get on my knees and beg? Even you eventually refused to do that.
You know what? You're right, Fern. I didn't beg for you to let me out, so it would be cruel for me to expect you to do so. Instead, I'll give you the treatment you gave me, and we'll call it even. Have fun! If he really can't get out on his own, I'll send Chatot to release him or something, just like how Chatot released me. With Fern's quest done, we make our way below the city to the Sub-7 Sanctum for the Dialga and Palkia quest with Luna, the girl who saved us from the Void earlier. For one reason or another, Luna is unable to enter this New World gate, so we need to go in by ourselves, and after being hit with a Monty Python reference, we're thrown in a cage. In the neighboring cage is a young Taka and Luna, although Luna is called her dead name here because this takes place in the past when they were still children, and she was still an egg. Luna was Taka's bloodbound servant, and the two of them have been locked in a cage for misbehaving. They were locked in a cage for misbehaving. I'm sorry, this detail isn't given much attention, but that's kind of fucked up, isn't it? Like, I'm not surprised a terrorist who tried to genocide a region turns out to be a pretty shitty dad, but what the fuck? Luckily, the statues here have gained magical properties, courtesy of Palkia's distortion, so we can walk through the walls and let them out. Later on, before we find the legendaries, we get to see more of Solaris being a real outstanding father, and he's very lucky I can't do anything to him or it'd cause a time paradox. Once we defeat the Palkia, we can reach the Dialga, which is presumably what brought us to the past. After its defeat, we begin to leave, but before we can, it lets loose one last roar of time as the world changes once again. Wait, no, not again, Lynn, please, no, 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 no! We return to Luna, and it seems her memories have been updated. Before we entered the portal, she hadn't met us until we went to Radimus's castle, but now the time-altering actions of Dialga have made her remember seeing us in the past. She's a little uncomfortable with us seeing her pre-transition, and yeah, I can see why that might be discomforting. Sadly, it seems Taka is still dead. I thought the vision we were shown after Dialga's Roar of Time may have been a new future, but Luna says he's still gone. Apparently, the reason the two of them split up was on his orders. He wanted her to live her own life, a life she could be happy with. A life he never got to live. She wonders if he could have found a life he was happy with if he was still here.
Find out.
Pardon, did you say something?
I want. Find out. I want out.
Young master?
I'm alive. I feel alive.
Oh my god, he's back. He's left unhinged by the umbral energy and talks about wanting to burn the sanctum to the ground, only to rein himself in. In spite of his deepest insecurities and traumas being brought to the forefront, he's still Taka. He doesn't want people to be hurt because of him. He asks us to break him free of the umbral energy, and with his Chatot by our side, we'll do just that. And with that, the spell is broken, but Taka remains. He did not appear to briefly give us closure. He's here to stay. He's understandably dying of embarrassment for all the shit he said as an umbral trainer, but that's pretty standard for most characters. Taka's character arc begins to focus on family and legacy from here on out, but for our purposes, that doesn't matter. Taka's alive, and that has an impact on Titania, although it's unclear if Titania knows what happened. She might, since Taka and Luna are both aware that he was dead, and Taka seems to remember how he was killed based on his dialogue in later quests. But whatever the case, she gets a new trainer class. Before, her trainer class was the Guardian Exile, a self-imposed punishment for her murder of Taka. But now that Taka is alive, her trainer class becomes the Guardian Princess, which shows that guilt no longer haunts her. This is nice, but it does present a bit of a problem. Killing Taka was traumatic, but it also promoted her character growth. The whole reason she was able to break up with Amaria for good is because she had to deal with the aftermath of killing Taka, and left us alone with Amaria for too long. If Taka didn't die, does that mean all of it was undone? Probably not, because Amaria still hates us and Titania still likes us, but it's also possible that even without Taka's death, their relationship would have broken down anyway. I sure hope that doesn't escalate anytime soon. So anyway, Titania and Amaria found the red and blue orbs respectively and are trying to kill each other. Florinia and Julia called us in for backup, and as the strongest fighter, it's up to us to stop them from killing each other. Bwap, bwap. Well, that was easy. This is a joke. Titania actually had a bit of an annoying team from monoflying, but phrasing it this way makes the video flow better. With the divisive duo out cold, all that's left is to grab the orbs and...
Noted.
God, nothing can ever be easy with these two, can it? It looks like we're going to need something with the power to neutralize the influence of the orbs, so Florinia tells us to go fetch a Rayquaza while she and Julia stay behind to try to keep the situation under control. Unfortunately, finding a Rayquaza is easier said than done, because after finishing all available quests, there are no more legendaries appearing on the radar. There's a blip at the meteor of the Deoxys quest, and once there we find out about a Giratina that's hiding the remaining legendaries. It's hiding in the Bixpaitian wasteland, and once we reach the gate in Giratina's domain, we're presented with a puzzle that Taka immediately destroys because he looks out for his Oomphies. As we approach the Giratina, Lyn begins talking in a more ominous tone. When we finally catch the Giratina, you're forced to catch it for story reasons, she likens us to the puppet she controlled in main game, and how did you find out my name? Okay, good. She's self-aware, but not that self-aware. That gave me a real scare my first playthrough, though, good lord. Well, with Giratina in hand and Lyn believing she's controlling us and is the player character, the remaining legendaries are revealed, including the oh-so-important Rayquaza. We're told Hardy learned about what happened to his sister, so he goes to catch the Rayquaza, but wipes like a dumbass. Unfortunately, once we beat it, the snake flies off and becomes an oh-so-infuriating roaming legendary. Or it would have if I didn't have unreal luck. Okay, so I have this footage of me awkwardly walking back and forth between wards to show the best strategy for tracking Rayquaza. If you enter a new area, Rayquaza moves, so if you do it until you get the windy weather, you'll find it, but when I flew to the Obsidia ward, it was already windy. Somehow I lucked out and Rayquaza went to the Obsidia ward too, and not only was it my first encounter, it happened to be a shiny. I have the DCAT mod active and have debugged some of my Pokemon to be shiny, but this one is completely natural. I have no idea how the stars aligned so well, but I'm not complaining. With the Rayquaza in hand, we return to Florinia, and she gives us the option to change our party before battle. This is to get rid of the Rayquaza for people who don't want to use it, which is a category I usually fall into, but as a flying trainer, I can actually use this thing, and its Delta Stream is theoretically handy. Once Rayquaza is brought out, both Amaria and Titania fight us in a 6v12, but it's mostly a formality. Their IVs have been neutered, and they have a tendency to use moves that hit each other as often as they hit us. This fight can be trivialized with Wide Guard to such an extent that Chatot can do this. With the first round done, Anomaly, Groudon, and Kyogre are released from our heroines, and Lyn decides to intervene. The situation has gotten out of hand, so she throws the character you have lower relationship points with off the island and their legendary abandoned ship with them. Normally I'd be fighting Titania, but since I prefer the outcome when you fight Amaria, I use debug to alter my relationship points to show this encounter first. Whichever opponent you face will be fought immediately after the last battle, although Lyn is kind enough to heal us, and with Amaria we're fighting on the water surface field. This is the same field she uses in her gym, but with the combined strength of the Anomaly Kyogre, this fight is rough. She has access to every field-changing option related to water surface, and means of changing it back to water surface as she pleases. Freezing, poisoning, diving underwater. She can swap between these and go back, so it's one of the hardest fights in the game, with our only saving grace being her IVs, while not as weak as before, still aren't at full power. It took me a few tries, but once we win, Amaria regains consciousness and when she realizes what's going on, begs us to deal with the Kyogre while she saves Titania. This isn't a hard task since you're supposed to catch it, which I don't, and with its defeat, everyone is safe. When Amaria returns with Titania, they're both alive, but Amaria feels awful. She believes this whole incident is her fault and it almost cost Titania her life. Even if she saved Titania in the end and didn't choose to be possessed by the blue orb, she was still a danger to those around her, and it only reaffirms her belief that she's an anchor weighing everyone down. Florinia, now with a better grasp on her own feelings, gently but firmly rejects this. She reminds Amaria of a time when they were younger and got in trouble over a misunderstanding that they only made worse by pranking their family. Amaria felt awful about that incident since Florinia was grounded for weeks, but Florinia tells her that those moments of childish glee and running away is one of her fondest memories, that she values Amaria's place in her life. This takes Amaria by surprise as she realizes that she's taken the joy she's given others for granted. She's always felt her false front was disingenuous when, even through her fake smile, she still had good times with the people around her and made their lives richer. With a lot to think about, she asks us to go deal with the Groudon, and once we return to the island with Julia, the OTS saga is brought to an end. Titania wakes up and Julia tries to get everyone back together, but that's still impossible. They've matured enough to talk like adults and not literally murder each other, but the issues at hand go too deep, and sometimes it's best for people to go their separate ways. Strangely enough, Amaria agrees with Titania on this sentiment. She wants to be a version of herself who isn't so dependent on others, and while she isn't happy with this, she wasn't happy before either, and this way, the person she cares about can be happy while she learns to move on. She knows that even if she saved Titania this time, it doesn't mean she's owed Titania's affection.
Rather than trying to write a happy ending, it's best if we both accept there are better stories for us to live by.
On that, we can agree.
Julia is understandably bummed out, but not only do they both intend to stay on good terms with Julia individually, this outcome is best for everyone. Julia understands this, but still wishes she could feel the closeness she once felt in high school. Sure, Amaria and Titania will be nice to her, but they aren't exactly inclined to play along with her shenanigans. But Florinia is. Florinia expresses a vulnerable emotional state which makes Julia positively jubilant. The two make plans to do absolutely wild things for the foreseeable future, and while Florinia laments how obnoxious it's probably going to be, she also can't deny her excitement. Unfortunately, we're not ready to move on yet because the scene plays out differently if we fight Titania instead of Amaria, and because I'm dedicated to the task at hand, I made a backup save to revert to after beating Amaria so I could show both outcomes. The fight against Titania and Groudon is easier against more general teams, but her team is more fire-oriented to pair well with Groudon, which can be a bit of a curveball, but ultimately isn't that bad. Once we win, we get to the scene that made me want to show Amaria's version first. When Titania comes to, Florinia tells her what's going on, and Titania doesn't seem to care that Amaria is drowning, assuming it's typical Amaria behavior. But when Florinia tells her she was thrown in unwillingly and unconsciously, Titania asks why Florinia isn't saving her. Florinia can't swim, and Titania should know that. Hell, even if she didn't, Florinia tells her she can't swim, and Titania says that, "You still have a choice." To what, Titania? Fucking drown? Are you stupid or something? That's how you get 2 drowning people instead of 1! I know that she's a little annoyed that this is probably the 10th time she's had to save Amaria from drowning, but I find it very hard to sympathize because this time it wasn't Amaria's fault, and Titania genuinely thought to tell the person who cannot swim to save her. Unfortunately, once we kill Groudon, it doesn't get much better because once she gets Amaria out, Titania's conversation with Florinia is so much worse than Amaria's. It is nice to see under her jaded cynicism that she still worries about Amaria, saying that the thought of her killing herself even after all she's done still scares her. But she spends most of the conversation nitpicking Florinia's mannerisms. She's nowhere near as robotic as before, and she says things that, while maybe unnecessary, shows she cares, and Titania reacts by telling her to have better responses. It's only at the end of the conversation that she says the right thing and is glad Florinia is addressing her emotions again. The worst part about this outcome is that not only does it deprive the chance for Amaria to do something kind and realize that she's been a positive presence in her friend's life, it also denies her growth in the final conversation. The only difference between the four-way conversations is that if you fight Titania, Amaria's line about being the savior but still knowing that she needs to move on is just cut, so Amaria is a less interesting character. Back in the nightclub, Amaria finally interacts with us, and while she technically doesn't apologize for semantic reasons, she does make peace with us, and Titania looks back into writing more. She doesn't have anything to run from and no obligation to engage in the violence she's gone on record saying she doesn't enjoy, and now that she doesn't need to use writing as escapism, maybe she can tell a story of passion instead of desperation. It's wonderful to see them all maturing in their own ways, and while they're far from perfect, they're undeniably some of the most human characters I've ever seen. Before we wrap this up in a nice conclusion and see what becomes of our heroines, I have one last treat for you. Deep under Tanzan Mountain is a new world gate that leads to the Neoteric Isle, said to be the lair of Mewtwo. Once we enter, we fight a clone of ourselves who, much like the player, says nothing and uses the exact same team we have. Once we defeat it, we find Fern deeper in, but he seems very shaken. He came to help with the Mewtwo issue, but he starts apologizing when he sees us. Not for one specific thing, but for everything he's ever done. He fought a clone of himself, but that one spoke to him, and he really didn't like what he heard. He's gone on and on about how he values smiling and tries to be a person he can smile at, but seeing an uncomfortably accurate reflection of himself makes him sick. The Mew from earlier flies by to taunt us, and Fern's ready for some revenge. Knowing that Mewtwo is likely nearby, I expect this will become a 12v12, and while there are better partners out there, I guess I can help him get some payback. He got boinked! I know I shouldn't laugh after he genuinely seems like he was trying to make amends, but that was still funny, and he seems fine, so he can whine at me later. This is a 6v12 where the team is comprised of almost all Ubers, but I happen to have something a little better.
Leatherface, watch out!
Florinia. She'll know what to do. When we bring Florinia here, she inspects the statue for a while and tries to think of a solution to no avail. She wants to believe if she studied more or knew more specialists, she could get him out of this. But she's matured enough to know that's just coping. This isn't the sort of thing she can get him out of, no matter how much she may want to. Even though Fern was a total piece of shit, to her especially, she did care about him. It wasn't just a care of obligation either. She didn't care about him just because they were related by blood. She cared about him because, even in his obnoxious way, he could be likable. One time, some of her classmates ruined her birthday party, so Fern tracked them down, beat them up, and stole their shoes. The boys were much older than him, and it sounds like he got beaten far more than he beat them, but he didn't let them get away with it. No one messes with his sister, except for him. She's on the verge of crying when she realizes she might not have smiled at him. Despite it being the only thing she remembers about that birthday, about how much that act meant to her, she might not have smiled at him, even then. With this, Lynn finally intervenes, and after being extremely mean to Florinia, she admits a level of gratitude to Fern for saving the protagonist, who she still believes is one of her avatars, so she works to free him. Of course, this kindness comes at a cost. Lynn isn't capable of saving anyone without exposing them to Umbral essence, so Fern returns as an Umbral trainer. But rather than unhinged, this Fern is downright wholesome. He makes sure Florinia is okay and wholeheartedly apologizes for what he said in Fiore. He admits he's a scared little shit who's wronged everyone he's ever known, but that he's gonna do better from now on. He also apologizes to us and says that he wanted to save the region at our side, that he was jealous of the friendships we made. He fights us, and he hopes when the spell is broken, he's able to confront his true feelings.
Now break me out and let's see it. See if I'm man enough to live up to my own goddamn pathetic feelings.
After it dissipates, he goes right back to being a snarky little shit, but a snarky little shit who cares. He's overjoyed when Florinia is disappointed that he went back to being a prick, because it means she still had hope in him. He's glad she's willing to feel anything positive about him, and is happy to have a sister like her. He also says he's proud that he could save us, that it's one of the only things he can truly smile at himself for. It's one of the penultimate redemption scenes in the game, and is why so many in the fandom love this redeemable little twerp. And that concludes the story of our characters. Once we reach the credits, we can see a variety of endings for characters we've got enough relationship points with. Unfortunately, Titania and Amaria's endings are mutually exclusive, but we get to see Julia turning her gym into a bowling ring. It involves coordinating with Florinia to make the power plant safer from her explosions, and sees them spending time together. In the same vein, Florinia's ending has her and Julia meeting up with environmentalists because Julia thought she'd be interested in it, and even though it becomes very stupid very quickly, they have a great time. Finally, in Titania's ending, we see she's gained more fame as an author and writes a story where happily ever after is the end of the prologue, showing she can turn a trope she looked down upon into a source of inspiration. Of course, while I called those endings, there is still one more section post-credits. Another time. During the Celebi quest, we briefly visited the future, and it skipped over seeing how everyone is doing 10 years from now without the protagonist. Now, after the credits roll, we can see how they're doing. We won't be checking in on TAKA for time travel reasons, but we can meet with the OTS quartet. Julia has completely changed her style and, while still being a little zany, is a far more responsible person, working closely with Eve to make the city safer and more power efficient. She still seems to cause problems every now and then, but is very dedicated to her work. Rather than clinging to the past, she looks forward to a brighter tomorrow. Titania and Fern have risen through the ranks and have become members of the Elite Four, and despite what happened in Victory Road, became close friends. It may not be as satisfying as her arc of becoming an author, but she's happy and has contributed greatly to the prosperity of the region. Meanwhile, Fern has become a more balanced person and hopes in a future with the protagonist present, he and the region will be better than ever. Amaria has started a garden in her home, and while we don't get too many details on how her life has changed, she tells us the only detail that she considers important. She's happy, and she's happy to see us again. Finally, we meet with Florinia as she chats with Celebi, crying tears of joy over how beautiful it is, and how grateful she is to see you again. With 10 years of growth, she's an entirely different person, being very open with her tears, joking with our companion who traveled through time with us, and energetically praising how far the region has come. Before we prepare to return to our time, we chat with Florinia again, and she gives advice that may be a bit basic, but I found it very uplifting. She talks about the absolutely disgusting brownies that Saphira made, a running joke throughout most of the conversations, but does so with compassion. Even though the brownies are mostly inedible, she tells us this.
Be like whoever made those awful, inedible brownies. No matter how catastrophically you mess up, keep trying and share what you've done with those you love anyway.
That one hits particularly close to home as I try to live by that with these videos. I hope they're not awful, and I even like to think they're good, but as I've said in a number of these videos, if even one person got joy out of it, then it was a worthwhile endeavor. And with that, the story of Reborn is finished. At least, this version of it is. I left so much on the table and only scratched the surface of the characters and plot. I never told you what happens with Lynn. I never concluded TAKA's arc. I didn't even mention the names of several other fantastic characters, because even this feature-length video was trying to be precise. The reason I made a video about these specific characters is because they spoke to me. I see a bit of myself in Julia, Florinia, Amaria, and Titania. I've clung to unnecessary ideals of what I should be like and felt unsure of how to help those around me. I've felt like distancing myself from my emotions was the safest way to avoid hurting myself or others. I've felt deep self-loathing and worried I'd drag others down, and I've felt extreme and sometimes unfair disdain to others. But at the end of the day, even with all my mistakes and flaws, I've grown. I've learned. Seeing these characters go through the ringer and still manage to be happy with themselves was personally really touching. Before I started writing, Florinia was probably my least favorite member of the group. I thought her character growth with the Lottie quest was a little forced and was too blunt, and while I still think that's true, I've grown to like her more. I appreciate how much her character, even if it lacks in subtlety, shows growth. That's probably why she chose to specialize in grass types. Plants are extremely important to life, and no matter where you are, no matter how desolate a desert or frigid a wasteland, life can grow. People can grow. People can mature. People can evolve. People can be reborn.